Welcome back to our channel. Today, we will explore a new case, the case of Nohema Graber. When a student at Fairfield High School received his Spanish test results, he found that his entire exam had been marked in red pen. He had failed because received a low grade. He was furious in front of his classmates, but the teacher reassured him, stating that she believed in his abilities and that he just needed to prepare better for the next test. Little did the elderly woman know that this would later have a tragic effect on her life. Fairfield is a small, quiet town in the southeastern part of the state of Quince, with a population of around 99,000 people. It features beautiful architecture and has about 12 parks and recreational areas, which is a significant number for a town of its size. One of these parks was a favorite walking spot for teacher Nohema Graber. She followed a daily routine of taking a certain number of steps to stay active and maintain her health, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of nature. However, on November 2, 2021, after finishing her workday, Nohema was tragically killed, leaving the residents of Fairfield in shock and fear. What a devastating event for their once peaceful town. Nohema was born on November 10, 1954, in Jalapa, Mexico, where she grew up in a loving family. From a young age, she was known for her openness and kindness. At the age of 20, Nohema began her career as a flight attendant for a major Mexican airline, which allowed her to indulge her passion for travel and an active lifestyle. She became one of the first women in Mexico to train as a pilot, paving the way for future female pilots in this challenging yet prestigious field. In 1985, at the age of 31, Nohema met Paul Graber, who was visiting Mexico on a business trip. They first encountered each other at a nightclub. After their meeting, Paul received Nohema's phone number and called her a few days later. Initially, he thought she was ignoring him, but she agreed to go on a date. Their relationship quickly blossomed into a romance. After a year of dating, on October 4, 1986, Nohema and Paul got married in Mexico. They then settled in Nohema's hometown, where she continued her work in the airline industry while Paul found a job in this new country. In 1991, after 5 years of marriage, the Graber family welcomed their first child, a son named Christian. A year later, they had another son, Jareth. Nohema, who was 37 and had worked for 17 years, decided to focus on her family. During the 1990s, the area where they lived became increasingly dangerous, prompting they to make the significant decision to leave Mexico and move to America, Paul's homeland. In 1992, they settled in Fairfield, where Paul found a well-paying job and supported the family while Nohema became a stay-at-home mom. Soon after, she gave birth to their daughter, Naima. Nohema quickly adapted to life in the U.S. and began attending St. Mary's Catholic Church, where she made a donation and eventually became a community leader. As time went on, their children grew up and began to move out, leaving Nohema feeling bored and lacking purpose. Once she turned 50, she decided to pursue further education and enrolled at Westland University in Mount Plant, Iowa. There, she earned a degree in English and a teaching certificate. Nohema then secured a job at a high school in Atashtat, Iowa, where she taught Spanish for several years, gaining valuable experience. In 2012, Nohema began teaching at Fairfield High School. Her students and colleagues appreciated her greatly, often speaking of her fondly. Graduates would send her postcards and letters, and she made it a point to respond, and always ending her replies with her signature message, "Be more confident." On November 2, 2021, after school, Nohema drove to the park. She was active and enjoyed walking, but that day she did not return home. Her husband, Paul, grew concerned when she didn't answer his calls. He went to the park and searched their usual spots, but he was unable to find her anywhere, and her car, a blue 1997 Honda Odyssey, was also missing. Feeling anxious, Paul promptly contacted the police to report. Right away, a search began in the park for Nohima. Her colleagues reported that she had not shown up for work, and since the previous evening, she had stopped responding to calls and messages. Meanwhile, students contacted the police with information about their classmate. They revealed that the night before, he had shared disturbing photos on social network. These photos were sent by Jeremy Goodale, a 16-year-old student at Fairfield High School. Born in 2005, Jeremy grew up in a dysfunctional family with 4 older siblings. His parents frequently argued and were often absent, leaving the older children to care for the younger ones. Eventually, the parents divorced. The mother moved in with another man, leaving her children behind to live with their father in the family home. The living conditions in the house were chaotic. It was filled with dirt and dust, flies buzzed around, and the bed linens had gone unchanged for months. They washed only once a week. The children lacked female care and love, so looked unkempt. Jeremy was described by his classmates as a quiet and modest boy who played on a baseball team. He didn't stand out much, except for his messy appearance. However, Jeremy faced more serious issues. He struggled with depression, anxiety, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Doctors prescribed him medication to help. He studied Spanish with a teacher named Nohima, and his best friend was Willard Miller. Unlike Jeremy, Willard came from a wealthy family, but he found school challenging, particularly with foreign languages. Willard had recently transferred to Fairfield High School after attending a prestigious school with a tougher curriculum. On November 3, the body of Nohima was discovered near the railway in the north. She was lying on the ground wrapped in a tarpaulin, covered with old sleepers, various garbage, branches, and leaves. At the time of the discovery, she had died many hours ago. An initial examination revealed that Nohima died from blunt force trauma to the head. What does that mean? Her death was a homicide, and that her body had been deliberately concealed. Witnesses reported seeing Nohima's Honda Odyssey leave the park around 5:00 p.m. She had spent approximately 45 minutes there. However, the witnesses could not identify or describe the actual driver. Shortly afterward, the police found her blue Honda abandoned on a country road south of where her body was located. Another witness later came forward, stating they saw 2 young men walking along this same road around 5:30 p.m., heading back to the park. One of them was pushing an old garden wheelbarrow. Unfortunately, this witness could not describe the young men and did not remember their faces. Based on the suspicious photo that went viral, the police arrived at Jeremy's house. He seemed agitated. Although he knew that the teacher was missing, he was unaware that her body had already been discovered. He denied any involvement in her disappearance, but was not informed about what the police had found at his home. Detectives discovered a blood-stained baseball bat and several black hairs in his house. They also found clothes and a blood-stained terry towel belonging to him. On Jeremy's phone, they found a text file titled "Preparation," which detailed the items needed for a planned act, including rubber gloves, wet wipes, a backpack, a bag, a blanket, a garden wheelbarrow, and other supplies. The file also outlined a step-by-step plan of actions. After the officers finished inspecting Jeremy's house, they proceeded to Willard's home. At that time, Willard, like Jeremy, was unaware that their teacher had already been found dead. Willard remained calm during the police questioning and readily discussed how he and Jeremy had walked in the local park the previous evening. However, he became visibly nervous when the conversation shifted to Nohima. His demeanor changed as he mentioned that Nohima did not regard him highly and often underestimated him. Meanwhile, the community of Fairfield was shocked and mourned the passing of Nohima, as she was known to be kind, compassionate, and always helpful to her students, leaving everyone puzzled about why anyone would want to harm her. After searches of the houses, Jeremy Goodale and Willard Miller were arrested and taken into custody on suspicion of murdering their Spanish language teacher. During their interrogation, they were informed that the body had been discovered. Both provided similar accounts of the events. They admitted to walking in the park that afternoon when they encountered their teacher. They greeted her, but suddenly, a group of masked individuals attacked Nohima, hitting her on the head with a bat, causing her to lose consciousness and fall. Jeremy and Willard claimed they were forced to watch as the assailants continued to assault her. They alleged that they were then told to hide the body, take her car, and abandon it near a country road. Jeremy and Willard denied any wrongdoing, asserting that they were merely witnesses to the murder and had been compelled to obey the orders of the true criminals. However, evidence found in Jeremy's house suggested otherwise. The blood and hair found on the baseball bat, as well as the blood on Jeremy's clothes and towel, all belonged to Nohima. Furthermore, there were no witnesses who saw a group of masked individuals or any strangers in the park. A notebook discovered in Jeremy's house revealed that he and his friends had been stalking Nohima for several weeks. They recorded the times her classes ended, when she left school, how long she spent in her car, and where she went afterward. This detailed documentation of Nohima's schedule indicated that it was easy for them to predict her daily movements. The young men knew that Nohima walked in the park every day and were familiar with this route. They chose the right moment to attack Nohima while she was walking alone on a dark, deserted street. During questioning, Willard admitted that he disliked Nohima because he felt she always underestimated him. He acknowledged that he frequently argued with her during class, and his classmates had witnessed these confrontations. These two young men told conflicting stories. This time, Jeremy accused Willard of hitting Nohima, while Willard insisted he had not touched her, claiming that it was Jeremy who had killed her. During the investigation, the investigators was uncovered that on the day of the incident, Jeremy and Willard went to a park and concealed themselves in an out-of-the-way spot while they waited. When Nohima arrived, one of them struck her on the head with a bat, causing her to lose consciousness and collapse. The two then dragged her off the path and took turns assaulting her until she died. Afterward, they covered her body with branches and leaves before fleeing the scene in her car, which they abandoned on a country road. While walking, they made their way to Willard's house, where they took a garden wheelbarrow, a shovel, and a tarpaulin. They returned to the crime scene, wrapped the victim in the tarpaulin, placed her in the wheelbarrow, and transported her to the railroad tracks. There, they concealed the body by placing old railway sleepers, garbage, branches, and fallen leaves on top. Once the body was hidden, Jeremy and Willard returned home and attempted to clean up any evidence of their crime, believing they would never be discovered. Detectives discovered unusual search queries on Willard's phone, including, "Do students receive credit for a lesson if a teacher is seriously injured or dies during a course?" And, "What happens to students' work if a teacher dies mid-course?" Before the incident, Willard had planned a trip to Spain, but after receiving a low grade on a test, that trip became uncertain. Prosecutors viewed Willard as the main instigator of the crime, driven by a desire for revenge against the teacher, while his friend Jeremy appeared to be following Willard's lead. Additionally, Jeremy struggled with depression and anxiety, which made him emotionally vulnerable and easier to manipulate. This made him a more suitable accomplice for Willard's malicious scheme. During his trial in December 2021, Jeremy pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and agreed to testify against Willard. In his testimony, Jeremy claimed that Willard was the first to attack their teacher, Nohima Graber, on the afternoon of November 2, 2021, when they both invited her out. He stated that Willard pushed her, causing her to fall and sustain serious injuries. However, Jeremy also confessed that after Nohima lost consciousness, he used a baseball bat to strike her multiple times, resulting in her death. Jeremy claimed that he and Willard beat her together to ensure that Nohima would not survive. Throughout the trial, Jeremy continually cried and asked for forgiveness from the family of the deceased. He expressed deep remorse for what had happened. Willard also admitted his guilt, but maintained that Jeremy had delivered the first blow. In court, Willard was more composed. Like Jeremy, he sought forgiveness from the Graeber family. He said, "I am truly sorry for the pain I caused you. I regret that your family is suffering because of me. I sincerely apologize from the bottom of my heart. I fully recognize the seriousness of my actions. I know I was wrong." Willard Miller was the first to be sentenced in June 2023, receiving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Sadly, another tragic event occurred following this story. Nohema's husband, Paul Graeber, passed away in June 2023 from terminal cancer. Paul, 68, was buried the day before Willard's verdict was announced, and he never saw his wife's killers face justice. Paul's family and friends reported that he was deeply affected by his wife's death. They believed that if Nohema had been alive, she would have noticed Paul's illness early and sought timely treatment, which might have saved his life. In November 2023, Jeremy Goodale was found guilty in connection with the case of Nohema and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. During the trial, Jeremy was so distraught that he experienced a nosebleed and cried. He expressed regret, saying, "I wish I could turn back time to prevent this loss and the pain I caused the family. It was the worst decision of my life, and I take full responsibility for what I did." Nohema Graeber had 3 adult children, brothers, sisters, nephews, and nieces, who certainly miss their beloved and caring mother. They fondly remember their mother and father. It is known that the sons and daughter forgave the murderers and try not to remember them. After their mother's death, one of the sons found their mother's personal diary. In it, she wrote short notes about her life, expressing that she loved teaching and adored her students very much. Nohema wrote that she would always smile and give her students support, stating that even if she could not teach them anything new, just looking at her would help the students learn to love life. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Crystal Rogers. Crystal Rogers, a 35-year-old mother of 4 from Bardstown, Kentucky, was known for her strong devotion to her children. She and her ex-husband Keith shared custody of their children. Despite the divorce, she maintained a friendly relationship with him for the sake of the children. At the time, her 2-year-old youngest son was with her current boyfriend, Brooks Houck. On July 5, 2015, Crystal's mother, Sherry Ballard, became worried when Crystal didn't respond to her phone calls. Crystal was a reliable and responsible who always responded to her calls, but this time Crystal was unresponsive. As the hours passed, Sherry's worry intensified, and after 24 hours without hearing from her daughter, she realized something was amiss. Sherry's instincts as a mother told her that Crystal's absence was unusual. She tried contacting Crystal multiple times, but her efforts were in vain. Sherry then reached out to Crystal's friends and family, hoping someone might know where she was, but no one had seen or spoken with her recently. Around the same time, Crystal's younger sister Brooke contacted Sherry, informing her mother that she too had been unable to reach Crystal. This makes Sherry even more worried and insecure. Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks, told her family that he had not seen her since Friday. He last saw her playing games on her phone before he went to bed. When he woke up the next morning, Crystal was gone. Brooks suspected she might have visited her cousin's house for the 4th of July celebrations. However, Crystal's mother, Sherry, became increasingly worried as she couldn't reach her daughter. She reported Crystal missing to the police department. While she was there, her son Casey received a call from a friend saying Crystal's car had been seen on the side of the road. This news alarmed Casey and his father, Tommy Ballard. They knew Crystal wouldn't voluntarily leave her car. When they arrived at the location, they found her car with a flat tire. This only deepened their concern, as they knew Crystal would have asked for help if she had car trouble. Casey and Tommy were puzzled as to why Crystal would stop the car to fix it herself. When they looked into the car, they noticed that Crystal's keys, phone, and wallet were still on the passenger seat. This discovery made them even more worried, as Crystal was not someone who would leave her belongings behind. The fact that her personal belongings were still in the car made her disappearance seem even more suspicious and unusual. After discovering Crystal's car on the Bluegrass Parkway, her father and brother immediately contacted the Nelson County Sheriff's Department. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found no signs of struggle, but one thing caught their attention: the driver's seat was positioned in a way that would have been uncomfortable for someone of Crystal's height, suggesting that someone else may have driven her car. The authorities continued to investigate and asked for help from potential witnesses. However, no one came forward with any useful information. The police then decided to use the media to appeal for public assistance in finding Crystal. They released her photo and asked for the public's help, but unfortunately, no one provided any significant leads. Tommy, Crystal's father, arranged search parties to find Crystal. The hot and humid weather made the searches challenging. Despite a large turnout, Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks, was absent. This made the police suspicious of his attitude. He seemed unconcerned about her disappearance. When questioned by detectives, Brooks provided an alibi, stating that Crystal and their young son had visited his family's farm the previous evening. They supposedly returned home around midnight, after which Brooks went to bed. He claimed Crystal stayed awake, engaged with her phone, playing games, as was her habit. In the morning, at 7 a.m., Brooks said their son was in bed with him, but Crystal was gone. Crystal's family initially suspected she might have gone out with her cousin. But those close to her dismissed this idea since she would never leave her 2-year-old son behind. Crystal's younger sister, Brooke, believed Crystal was planning to leave her partner, Brooks. According to Brooke, this was because Brooks had been dishonest with Crystal and lack of emotional attachment. Crystal told her mother, Sherry, that she wanted to leave Brooks. She said one of the main reasons was his controlling behavior towards her. Casey, Crystal's brother, had recently witnessed tension between Brooks and Crystal, including several heated arguments. The police asked Brooks to come in for questioning and take a polygraph test, but the results are not clear. Afterward, Brooks participated in a formal interview with the police. Detectives obtained video footage confirming details of Brooks' story. A video showed his truck entering the family farm, and later footage showed the vehicle leaving the property around midnight. However, because the windows of Brooks' truck were dark, police were unable to identify the occupants at the time. Brooks spent time at his parents' farm doing chores and setting a fire to burn some building materials. After for the fire to die down, he drove home. During a police interview, Brooks was questioned about a brief 13-second phone call he made to Steve Lawson, a business associate, while driving home. Brooks offered to have Steve explain the call to the police and asked him to call them during the interview. Steve claimed he called Brooks to get some phone numbers for a rental property, but Brooks said he needed to get home first and ask Crystal, who handled such matters. However, the police found Lawson's explanation suspicious, as it seemed rehearsed. The police were puzzled by this response, considering Brooks was with Crystal at the time of the call. They questioned why Brooks couldn't simply hand Crystal the phone, allowing her to discuss the issue immediately, rather than waiting to talk to her in person later. During Brooks's interview, his brother Nick, a Bardstown Police Department officer, called him with urgent advice to leave the interrogation room immediately. The police had doubts about their initial theory that Crystal had abandoned her car on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway and ran away. Instead, they suspected that something had happened to Crystal while she was at the Brooks family farm. As the investigation into Crystal's disappearance progressed, several people reported seeing Brooks's truck and Nick's police car at his family farm to the police. This led detectives to believe that the brothers might have been at the farm to dispose of evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. To learn more, the police brought in Brooks's brother, Nick, for questioning. They confronted him with eyewitness accounts placing that him at the farm on July 8 and asked him to explain his emergence there. Nick initially claimed he had no knowledge of the incident surrounding Crystal's disappearance and denied being present that night. The police continued questioning him, directly asking if he and Brooks had tampered with or hidden evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. Nick strongly denied any involvement and assured them that, as a police officer, he would never aid in covering up a crime. The police then asked Nick to submit to a polygraph test, which he agreed to. However, he failed to answer truthfully to two key questions: whether he knew Crystal's current location and if he was withholding information about her disappearance. Despite failing the polygraph test, Nick insisted that he was telling the truth. On October 15, investigators identified Brooks as the primary suspect in Crystal's disappearance. The same day, Brooks's brother, Nick, was terminated from the Bardstown Police Department for interfering with the investigation. Although the police were pretty sure they knew who the culprit was, they didn't have enough evidence to make an arrest. The police were concerned that if they took their suspect to court without sufficient evidence, the suspect might be acquitted. If that happened, they couldn't charge the suspect with Crystal's murder again. Due to the double jeopardy law. To help find more evidence, the FBI, Kentucky law enforcement agencies, Crystal's friends and family, volunteers, and missing people organizations conducted thorough searches at the Brooks family farm. The lengthy search left her loved ones terrified and desperate for news. As the search continued, her family remained hopeful that she would be found alive and well. At the Brooks family farm, investigators searched the ashes of a fire and, although they did not find any human remains, they did find pieces of clothing. Unfortunately, they were unable to link these clues to Crystal's case. The police executed multiple search warrants at the Brooks family farm, focusing on their cars and residences. However, these searches failed to yield significant leads or evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. A $100,000 reward was offered for any information that could help find Crystal, but no one stepped forward with any tips despite this large incentive. Tommy, Crystal's father, took it upon himself to investigate his daughter's disappearance, following every lead he received, no matter how small or insignificant it may have seemed. His determination was unwavering, driven by his love for Crystal. Unfortunately, Tommy had already faced a devastating loss in his family. In January 1979, his pregnant sister was brutally murdered by her husband and his accomplice. The perpetrators shot and beat her, set her remains on fire, and scattered them on a farm. Although it took years, but the suspects were eventually arrested, found guilty, and sentenced to life in prison. Tommy remained committed to finding out what happened to his daughter Crystal, despite the many challenges he faced. He conducted his own investigation, canvassing the neighborhood, conducting interviews, and reaching out to anyone who might have information about his daughter's disappearance. To aid in his search, Tommy also utilized his own savings to hire private investigators and cadaver dogs. To keep track of the investigation, Tommy carefully documented every clue he found. He worked with the police, sharing his discoveries and asking for their advice. November 2016, Tommy took his 11-year-old grandson, Crystal's son, on a hunting trip on their property early in the morning. As they left, Tommy's wife Sherry watched them go, feeling uneasy. She couldn't help but pray for their safety in the woods. Sherry tried to calm down after they left, but her peace was short-lived. Just minutes later, she received a frantic phone call from her grandson, Crystal's son. His voice shook with fear. He then exclaimed, "Mimo, Papa has been shot." Sherry's world came crashing down. Her nephew's panicked voice on the phone told her something terrible had happened. She quickly threw on some clothes and rushed to call 911, and she reassured her distressed grandson that help was on the way. Her mind was flooded with fears of what might have happened to her husband, Tommy. When Sherry arrived at the scene, she witnessed a horrifying sight: her husband lying on the ground, unresponsive. Distraught, she rushed to his side and tried to wake him up, hoping he would respond. But her efforts only revealed a grim truth: blood was pouring out of his nose. The officers and bystanders at the scene quickly pulled her away so that the medical team could try to save him, but it was too late. Tommy was pronounced dead. The initial police reports suggested that Tommy's death was the issue of a hunting accident. However, Sherry knew this could not be true. She was adamant that her husband had been murdered, and she made her feelings clear to the authorities. "This is no accident," she insisted. "This is she husband, and it's a murder, and you know it." During the investigation, the investigators was found that Tommy's own gun had not been used, making it unlikely that he had committed suicide. The investigators then determined that Tommy's 11-year-old grandson was not involved in the shooting. As the investigation progressed and more facts came to light, Sherry's suspicion that her husband's death was indeed a murder gained credibility. The Kentucky State Police have informed the public that they are treating Tommy Ballard's death as a murder. The Tommy family believes that he was killed because he was getting close to discovering what happened to his missing daughter, Crystal. They think the people responsible for Crystal's disappearance felt threatened by Tommy's investigation and had him murdered to prevent the truth from coming out. In 2022, the FBI conducted a 5-day investigation into Crystal's disappearance. Investigators returned to the Brooks family farm to search for more evidence, with the goal of gathering enough information to hold suspects for Crystal's disappearance accountable. In October 2022, the FBI confirmed that it would analyze all evidence collected at its lab in Quantico. As the investigation into Crystal's disappearance continued, the Kentucky Attorney General appointed a special prosecutor to help prosecute criminal charges related to the deaths of Crystal Rogers and her father, Tommy. Crystal's mother, Sherry, was aware of and fully supported the decision to appoint a special prosecutor. She believed the move was necessary to ensure justice for her husband and daughter, and she viewed the appointment as a positive development that brought new perspective and expertise to the case. The decision to appoint a special prosecutor also showed that the case was being taken seriously and that those responsible would be held accountable. On September 2023, authorities arrested Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks Houck, and charged him with murder and tampering with physical evidence. The court set Brooks bail at $10 million and prohibited him from contacting Crystal's family members. Notably, Brooks was previously arrested in 2022 for multiple traffic offenses and was released after paying a series of fines. When Brooks was arrested for Crystal's murder, many in Bardstown brought a sense of relief. While the confirmation of Crystal's death was devastating, the community was relieved to know that justice was being pursued, bringing some sense of closure to the case. 1 month after his arrest, in October 2023, Brooks appeared in court for the first time, though virtually rather than in person. The judge inquired if the special prosecutor, Shane Young, was investigating other cases related to Crystal's case. The prosecutor confirmed that they were looking into the death of Tommy, Crystal's father, and suspected a connection between the two murders. Notably, Shane Young believed they had obtained the gun used to kill Tommy. The firearm was reportedly purchased from Nick, who allegedly used an alias during the transaction. Preliminary investigations revealed that the caliber of the rifle matched the one used in Tommy's shooting. Shane Young stated that they were examining the gun based on 5 key criteria. So far, the results have matched 4 of these criteria, suggesting a possible link between the firearm and Tommy's murder. Crystal's grandfather felt relief when the special prosecutors, Shane Young, connected the 2 murders in court. They hoped for a swift and fair outcome in both cases. However, when questioned about the allegations by Shane Young, Brooks and Brooks' mother refused to answer any questions. During the court hearing, the prosecutor alleged that the Brooks family had secretly recorded the grand jury proceedings. The prosecutor claimed that several family members Brooks were involved in this activity. Brooks' attorneys requested that the Nelson County judge be removed from the case, citing bias. They claim that the judge has had a hostile view of Brooks since 2017. The attorneys also argued that the $10 million bail is excessive and should be reconsidered. Attorneys representing Brooks argued that having a biased judge hear the case would be unfair to him. The lawyers argued that the judge's previous statements and actions showed that he was unfair. They asked the court to remove the judge and quickly appoint a new judge to ensure a fair trial. The Kentucky Appeals Court has recently made two key decisions. Firstly, Brooks will remain in jail with a $10 million bond. Secondly, the court has denied a request to remove the judge presiding over Brooks's trial. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Becky Bleefnick. Becky and Tim met while studying at Quincy University. Becky majored in biology and loved tennis. Tim was an excellent football player, popular in school. Those close to Tim commented that he was a cheerful, innocent, and friendly guy. Tim always greeted everyone with a warm hug. With an enthusiastic and friendly personality, Tim was very loved by his friends. On the other hand, Becky's friends described her as a cheerful person, capable of making the surrounding atmosphere bright and positive just by her presence. With her positive energy and bright smile, Becky easily made a good impression on everyone around her. Both Becky and Tim were attractive people, and they seemed to complement each other perfectly. The combination of attractive appearance and compatible personalities made them an ideal couple in the eyes of everyone. 2 years after graduating from Quincy University, Becky and Tim decided to get married and start a new phase in their lives. Being a practical couple, they prioritized saving money over spending. Instead of buying an engagement ring and planning a lavish honeymoon, they decided to use their savings to put a down payment on their first home. Becky had dreamed of becoming a doctor, but ultimately did not pursue this career. Although she loved medicine, Becky felt a stronger calling to motherhood. She longed to experience the joy and happiness of motherhood. This dream came true when she and her husband Tim had 3 sons. Becky loved spending quality time with her children and watching them grow up. As her children grew older, Becky decided to pursue her own dreams. She chose to go back to school to get her nursing degree. On the other hand, Tim has always been a performer, from his time in community theater in Quincy to creating comedic videos on social media. He has the ability to captivate audiences with his humor and charisma. In 2008, Tim decided to challenge himself by entering the competition American Gladiators. Although he did not make it to the final round, he tried his best and made it to the final audition round of the show. In September 2019, Tim took a new opportunity to attract attention and showcase his talent. The production team of the popular TV show Family Feud invited Tim and his family to participate. However, Becky could not join him because she was attending nursing school. Determined to make the most of the opportunity to participate in the show, Tim gathered his family, including his parents and brothers. Family Feud is a television game show where 2 families compete against each other by guessing the most popular answer from a survey of 100 people. Steve Harvey, the famous host of Family Feud, asked Tim, "What do you think is the most popular answer to the question, 'What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?'" Tim, known for his sense of humor, surprised Steve Harvey in the audience with his clever answer. He said, "Honey, I love you, but said I do." This statement was shocking and made the whole studio laugh. Although this answer was not expected, it still won second place on the leaderboard, burning Tim and his family many points. The Bleefnick family competed on Family Feud for 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000. The prize money was divided equally among the family members. There was one notable exception, however. Tim did not share his reward with his wife, Becky. After many years of marriage, Becky and Tim's relationship began to strain. When Becky decided to become a nurse, Tim strongly objected. He said he was worried about Becky's health because nursing was often a high-stress job. Tim also noticed that Becky often had difficulty controlling her patience and stress when caring for the children. This made him worry about her ability to handle the job of a nurse. However, Becky's friends had a different view of Tim's reaction. They believed that Tim did not want Becky to be independent and free to pursue her own interests. Over time, they noticed that Becky was no longer as happy in the marriage as she had been before. Things were going well for the first 5 years, but then Tim began to act more controlling and manipulative towards Becky. Becky's friends noticed that while Becky was putting a lot of effort into her studies and nursing work, Tim was not contributing his fair share to the household chores. Tim did not participate in cleaning and taking care of their son. Instead, he left Becky to shoulder all the household chores after her long, tiring shifts at the hospital. Becky noticed that their marriage was struggling and wanted to work on this with Tim. She suggested that the two of them go to marriage counseling, hoping that this would help them improve the situation and mend their relationship. However, Tim refused this proposal, leaving Becky feeling disappointed. Although Becky tried her best to save their marriage, Tim had other intentions. In January 2012, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce from Becky. This decision shocked Becky, as she had shown determination and effort to maintain the relationship. However, Tim's intentions were clear. He moved out of the house and into a new place on the other side of town. Tim explained that the main reason for his decision to divorce was due to the change in Becky's personality after she became a nurse. He found that her new career had significantly affected her behavior, causing a negative impact on their marriage. The divorce process was stressful. Tim and Becky could not find common ground and their relationship more deteriorated. During the divorce proceedings, Tim and Becky fought over a number of issues, including child custody, property division, and alimony. The situation became so tense that Tim filed for a protective order against Becky. He accused her of stalking and harassing him. Tim cited one specific incident. During a parent-teacher, Becky became aggressive and argued with him. As evidence, Tim provided a cell phone video of Becky banging on his car door outside the school after the conference. Becky, however, had a different view of the situation. She believed that Tim was the one who was harassing her. Becky texted her friends to share her concerns. In the messages, she described multiple instances of Tim's violent behavior, including yelling at her, pushing her in front of the children, and throwing things around the house. Becky sent a text message to a friend, expressing her deep concern about Tim's mental health. She noticed that Tim was becoming more hostile and unpredictable. Recently, a co-worker of Becky's was murdered by her partner, which made her even more fearful for her safety. Becky began to suspect that Tim might harm her, similar to what had happened to her co-worker. As a result, Becky sent a text message to her sister, saying that if anything happened to her, Tim would be the one to pay the most attention. Becky was worried that Tim would use force to gain custody of their child. This message made Becky's sister very worried about her sister's safety. She understood that Becky's fears were justified and that Becky needed immediate help. Out of concern for Becky's safety, her sister convinced her to seek help from the Domestic Violence Support Center. After some consideration, Becky decided to file for a protective order against Tim. After reviewing both Tim and Becky's requests for protective orders, the judge decided not to grant either of them. Instead, the judge ordered them to stay away from each other's homes, except to exchange custody of their children. On February 22nd, Becky and Tim's 3 sons, ages 12, 10, and 5, stayed overnight at Tim's house. Tim's house is about a mile from where Becky lives. The divorce proceedings between Becky and Tim are expected to be finalized within the next week. The next day, Tim called Becky's father. He explained that he had been unable to reach Becky and that she had not picked up her sons from school as usual. Becky's father, knowing that his daughter was devoted to her children, realized that something serious must have happened that had left Becky unable to perform her duties as a mother. Concerned about Becky's health, her father drove to her house immediately. When he arrived, he entered the house and walked through the rooms, calling Becky's name. Receiving no response, he went upstairs and entered his daughter's bedroom. Inside, he witnessed a horrifying scene: Becky lying motionless in a pool of blood, her body covered in gunshot wounds. Investigators arrived at Becky's house after her father discovered her body in the bathroom. Becky's body was lying on her back, covered in blood and showing no signs of life. Investigators began their investigation by thoroughly inspecting the exterior of the home. After a thorough search, they determined that the suspect had entered the home by forcing open an upstairs window in a child's bedroom. This discovery revealed that the suspect had used a porch chair to gain easy access to the home and onto the roof. Investigators followed the trail they believed the suspect had taken. They headed toward Becky's bedroom, where the door appeared to have been kicked in or forcefully broken. The damage to the bedroom door indicated that the suspect had entered the room, most likely to look for Becky. Evidence indicated that Becky attempted to hide in the bathroom, but the suspect followed and caught up with her. The suspect eventually shot Becky in the bathroom. While examining the crime scene around the bathroom where Becky's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. When investigators examined Becky's phone, they found a call to 91126 at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped them develop a theory about what happened that night. They believe that while being chased by the suspect in her home, Becky tried to call 911 for help, but in a panic, she mistakenly dialed 91126. Before Becky could call 911 again, investigators believe that the suspect grabbed the phone from her. The mistaken call occurred at 1:11 a.m., so they think Becky may have been murdered around that time. However, when police investigated Becky's neighborhood, no one remembered hearing any strange noises at that time. This raised suspicions for investigators. Since Becky had multiple gunshot wounds, it was unlikely that no one heard anything. When investigators thoroughly searched Becky's home, they quickly determined that the murder was not a burglary, as nothing was missing. However, the perpetrator left behind a number of important pieces of evidence. Most notably, a partial shoe print was found near the entrance. This shoe print could help identify the make and model of the suspect's shoes, as well as provide information about the size and shape of their feet. At the scene, investigators found 8 9mm bullet casings and several small pieces of plastic scattered on the floor near Becky's body. Despite the extensive evidence collected, investigators were still unable to come to a definitive conclusion. Therefore, they decided to send the collected evidence to a forensic lab for further analysis. Detectives are investigating whether any of Becky's neighbors had installed security cameras outside their homes. They discovered that a neighbor had installed a camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year ago. The camera was facing the neighbor's driveway, which bordered Becky's house. It was set up to detect motion and send an alert to the homeowner. However, on the night of Becky's death, the camera did not capture any important footage. As they investigated further, investigators discovered that on the day of the murder, a man was seen walking down the back path of Becky's house at 1:05 a.m. on the security camera footage. About 48 minutes later, the man was seen walking back in the opposite direction. Becky's neighbor's security camera also recorded a similar incident about a week earlier. On February 14th, Footage from the neighbor's security camera showed Becky seeing a dark figure lurking around her house. After discovering this, Becky's neighbor immediately informed her of the news. After the neighbor reported the mysterious stranger, Becky began to feel anxious. Although she had not seen anyone on her house, she had heard noises in her backyard the night before, which frightened her. Police reviewed security camera footage from Becky's neighbors and continued to search the neighborhood for additional footage. They found video from a home near the Quiney bus stop that showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing moving toward Becky's home. The videos showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing, matching the description of the mystery person in the footage of Becky's driveway. After analyzing the time of the footage, detectives suspected that the bicyclist was the person in the footage. Although Becky's neighbor's security cameras did not capture the mystery person on the night of her murder, police did stumble upon footage of a bicyclist heading toward Becky's home shortly before and after the incident. The video footage showed a person matching the description of the person lurking in Becky's driveway before she was murdered. While the video was helpful to the investigation, the poor quality of the footage made it difficult to gather details. Detectives were unable to determine the gender or identity of the person in the video due to the graininess of the image. However, they did notice one important detail: the bicycle the person was riding appeared to have no reflectors on its wheels. When Becky was murdered, her sister immediately thought of Tim, Becky's soon-to-be ex-husband, as a possible suspect. She had witnessed their tense divorce and shared this thought with the detectives investigating the case. Based on this information, the police began to consider Tim as the prime suspect. Notably, the murder occurred just a week before Becky and Tim finalized their divorce, making the situation particularly suspicious. During the investigation of Becky's murder, investigators made an important discovery. They found a bicycle without reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on the security camera, just a block away from Tim's house. This discovery raised suspicions about Tim, prompting detectives to seek a search warrant for his home. When police executed the search warrant, Tim was cooperative and respectful. He willingly stood outside the home with the officers while investigators searched his property. On March 13, 2023, Tim was arrested and charged with Becky's murder 2 weeks earlier. When Tim's mugshot was released, Becky's family and friends were shocked by his appearance. Instead of the well-groomed man they knew, they saw a completely different Tim, unkempt and seemingly frail. Many believe that this change reflected the negative impact that the divorce had had on Tim. His unkempt hair and shabby clothes were a clear sign of the deterioration in his previously well-groomed appearance. The divorce was blamed for Tim's declining physical and mental health, according to friends and family. However, Tim explained that he had grown his hair long to take part in a charity campaign to raise awareness for cancer research. A clip from the Family Feud show in which Tim said he wished he had not married his wife when he was arrested for murdering her caused a stir. Many people saw this reaction as an uncanny sign of Tim's true feelings for his wife. Some even suggested it was a warning sign of potential problems in their relationship. Investigators carefully examined Tim's phone and discovered that he had created a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During the investigation, they discovered that Tim had been looking to buy a bicycle on Facebook. He was particularly interested in a blue Schwinn without reflectors on the wheels. This was notable because it matched the description of the bike found abandoned near Tim's home, just a block away. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Tim, convicting him was difficult. Tim was held without bail and ordered a speedy trial, requiring the prosecution to bring the case to trial within 90 days of his arrest. However, the prosecution faced a major challenge in convincing a jury of Tim's guilt, due to the lack of two key elements that are often considered decisive in criminal cases: a confession and DNA evidence. Without these two elements, proving Tim's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt became very difficult. In prosecuting Tim for his wife's murder, the prosecution faced a major challenge. 3 months after Becky was murdered in their home, Tim appeared in court on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the state presented evidence that investigators had collected at the scene. A key piece of evidence was the plastic debris found around Becky's body. The prosecution claimed that it was from an Aldi grocery bag. They also told the jury that several similar bags were found during a subsequent search of Tim's home. The prosecution alleged that Tim used the Aldi plastic bag as a silencer when he shot his ex-wife multiple times in order to muffle the sound of the gunfire and avoid detection. They claimed that Tim left DNA on the bags. An expert who testified said it was highly likely that the DNA found on the bags belonged to Tim. Prosecutors presented evidence to the jury about a crowbar found in Tim's basement that they believed could have been used to pry open a window at the victim's home on the night of her murder. However, an expert testified that although there were some slight similarities between the marks on the window and the crowbar, she could not say for certain that the crowbar was used in the crime. The prosecution presented several new pieces of evidence to bolster its case. They presented searches that Tim had conducted on his phone, including how to open a door with a crowbar, how to make a silencer for a homemade pistol, how to clean gunpowder off his hands, and the average response time for Quincy police. An expert was called to testify that she had compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to the shell casings found in Tim's home. She determined that 27 of the shell casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used in the murder. When investigators searched Tim's home, they did not find Becky's 9mm gun. Tim claimed that he had not seen the gun for months before Becky was killed. During the trial, the defense did not call any witnesses. After a 6-day trial, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before finding Tim guilty. Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Although Tim maintained his innocence and planned to appeal, Becky's family believed the sentence was deserved. Becky's sister spoke to Tim about the consequences of his actions on his sons, emphasizing that his choices had caused them pain. Even though Becky is gone, her sister promises to keep her memory alive in the hearts of her 3 sons.
Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Michelle Leng. In 2018, 20-year-old Michelle Leng departed from a major airport in northern Sichuan province, China, during a heavy rainstorm. She tearfully bid farewell to her mother, who had become her closest confidant since her father's passing in 2008. Michelle embarked on her journey to Australia, a country she had long dreamed of studying in since childhood. After an 11-hour flight, Michelle arrived in Sydney. Although it was her first time traveling such a great distance alone, her determination to pursue her dream helped her overcome any challenges she faced. Upon landing, she was greeted by her aunt and her cousin, who was just 2 years younger than Michelle. She lived happily with her 48-year-old aunt, her aunt's young husband Derek Barrett, and her cousin in their house. Michelle had her own room where she spent most of her free time reading and drawing, which were her favorite hobbies. Michelle was a bright and ambitious student who pursued economics and hospitality management at the University of Technology in Sydney. She was outgoing, adaptable, and easily made new friends. Like many young women her age, Michelle enjoyed sharing her social life on social media, posting pictures of herself enjoying cocktails with friends and engaging in adventurous activities. Michelle had a passion for exploration and was always ready for new experiences. She frequently traveled around New South Wales on day trips and even ventured as far as Hobart for vacations. Her adventurous spirit was evident in her recent social media posts, which included videos from West Head Lookout near Sydney Harbour, photos from Resolute Beach in Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park north of the city, and images from Berry Beach on the south coast. On June 13, 2013, Michelle went to Snapper Point where she bravely took a photo of herself on the edge of a cliff. She then shared this ominous photo on her Instagram account. Michelle was excelling in her studies, making new friends, and had found a part-time job. Eager to organize her personal life, she regularly communicated with men on dating sites and went on trial dates. She led an active and busy life. She attended her classes during the day, then rushed to work. On weekends, she made sure to meet up with her friends and visit places. On April 21, 2016, Michelle spent the day with a friend at the mall, having lunch and shopping. Later, she took a train and was last seen getting off at Central Station around 4:30 p.m. She disappeared after that. 2 days later, Derek went to the train station to pick up his wife, who was returning from a business trip. Derek's aunt asked him about Michelle, and he informed her that he hadn't seen Michelle in 2 days. Derek, who had been jobless for a while, had a habit of staying up late on his computer and sleeping until the afternoon. Although it was possible he hadn't seen Michelle, the situation was concerning because no one had heard from her since April 22, and her phone was turned off. Michelle's aunt grew increasingly worried after calling all of Michelle's friends and acquaintances. Upon inspecting Michelle's room, everything appeared to be in its usual perfect order. After examining Michelle's laptop, the family concluded that she hadn't returned from her date, and they feared something might have happened to her. Michelle's disappearance was particularly alarming because she typically maintained daily contact with friends and family members living in China and Australia. On the day following Michelle's disappearance, her aunt and uncle Derek reported her missing to the police and informed the Chinese embassy. On April 24, 2016, tourists discovered a woman's body in a plastic bag at Snapper Point. While Michelle's relatives in both China and Australia were searching for her, local news channels reported the discovery of the unidentified body. When a sketch of the victim was released, it became clear that the body was Michelle's. Police took 3 days to officially identify her using the sketch. Subsequently, Michelle's case was officially classified as a missing person, and an investigation began. After interviewing close relatives who lived with Michelle, the initial theory was that she had been attacked by a stranger she had planned to meet that day. Security cameras recorded her movements on the day of her disappearance. In the footage and during a short train ride, Michelle was alone. According to her friends, she had no plans to meet anyone that day and was in a hurry to get home. The analysis of her social media accounts and correspondence did not confirm the existence of a young man she might have arranged to meet. Thus, the theory about a mysterious stranger who could have committed the crime was not confirmed. The autopsy confirmed that Michelle's body had multiple injuries, indicating she likely tried to defend herself from her attacker, suffering several stab wounds. Police Chief Inspector Gary Jubin stated that the evidence suggests Michelle was brutally assaulted before her death. She was last seen on her way home and didn't deviate to any other location, which raises questions about who could have attacked her so violently. The inspector also noted that the perpetrator probably deliberately chose a very isolated area in an otherwise beautiful place. The body was found in an area frequented by tourists and fishermen, but at a specific spot that was quite secluded. Forensic analysis revealed that Michelle's body had been in the water for less than 48 hours, possibly much less. The police chief inspector noted that while the body was found far from the national park entrance, a nearby parking lot made it possible for someone to transport the body by car. Homicide detectives examined CCTV footage and traffic cameras to trace Michelle's final movements. They also interviewed family members, friends, and co-workers to gather more information, aiming to reconstruct the events leading up to her death and understand the family dynamics in Michelle's household. Inspector Gary stressed that based on all gathered information, Michelle was known to be very responsible and consistently communicated her whereabouts to her family. Her sudden disappearance raised significant concerns for her well-being. Surprisingly, for 2 days, her family either didn't realize she was missing or chose to ignore it. As Derek was the last person known to have seen Michelle alive, police brought him in for questioning. Investigators found his stories about nighttime activities and extended daytime sleeping suspicious, leading them to conduct follow-up interviews. During these, they probed into his relationship with Michelle and asked him to recall their last encounter in detail. Derek, overwhelmed by the intense questioning, stopped answering and requested legal representation. His unusual behavior raised suspicions, leading to his arrest as a suspect. The arrest was explained by two key pieces of evidence. First, investigators discovered that Derek's cell phone signal placed him in the vicinity where Michelle's body was found on April 24th. Second, police obtained surveillance footage from a nearby parking lot, showing a car matching Derek's vehicle in the early morning hours of that same day. These findings strongly suggested Derek's presence at the crime scene, leaving little doubt about his involvement. Derek denied the accusations and claimed that his presence in the parking lot was a mere coincidence, insisting that the car wasn't his. However, the surveillance footage was clear enough to prove he was there. The police charged him for the death of 25-year-old Michelle, whose naked body with multiple stab wounds was found in a blowhole on the central coast of New South Wales. The news of Derek's arrest and the charges against him shocked Michelle's entire family. The police spoke with Michelle's mother, who was devastated by her daughter's death and rushed to Sydney to see the place where her only daughter's dreams and life came to an end. She still couldn't come to terms with her passing. Derek Barrett, a 27-year-old man married to Michelle's aunt, was charged with the murder of the 25-year-old student. Police released CCTV footage showing Michelle's final movements on April 21st in Sydney's central business district. The video captured her shopping at Pitt Street Mall and then taking a train from St James Station to Casula in Sydney's southwest. Investigators believe Michelle returned to her family home in Casula that afternoon, where she lived with her uncle, aunt, and cousin. It is presumed that she was murdered in her home. CCTV footage reportedly showed a vehicle entering Lake Munmora National Park around 7 a.m. on April 24th. Police believe Michelle's body was in this vehicle. Although Derek was arrested and charged initially, the investigation continued. As more information about Michelle's final moments came to light, additional charges were filed against Derek. These included 5 counts of indecent assault, 2 counts of installing a filming device, and murder. The investigation also uncovered that the suspect had an inappropriate sexual interest in his wife's young niece. Analysis of Derek's cell phone revealed crucial evidence. Deleted files were recovered that demonstrated his involvement in Michelle's death and his unhealthy obsession with her. It was discovered that Derek had installed a hidden camera in the shared bathroom and regularly reviewed the recordings. The phone also contained images taken shortly before Michelle's death. Records showed that Michelle arrived home on April 21st around 5 p.m. Her last text message was sent close to midnight, and she was not heard from again after that. During the night, Derek carried out his wicked plan. He entered Michelle's room while she was sleeping to record her, as he had done before, but this time she woke up and he attacked her. He tied her up and covered her mouth with duct tape to silence her. Derek kept Michelle tied to the bed for 2 days, periodically abusing her. Investigators found photos on Derek's phone showing Michelle naked and bound, with an expression of terror. These images didn't show the injuries that eventually caused her death. The last photo was taken around 8 a.m. on April 23rd, when Michelle was still alive. On April 23rd, Derek's stepson came home twice, not hearing Michelle's quiet moans. Derek was taking a shower at the time. Security cameras recorded Derek leaving the apartment 4 times to take out the trash. Michelle was likely already dead by then, and after showering and washing off the blood, Derek thoroughly cleaned the house, hiding any evidence of the crime and Michelle's disappearance. On April 24th at 7 a.m., Derek drove to Snapper Point. On the way, he stopped at a gas station where he bought drinks and filled up his car. He was captured there by security cameras. Upon arriving at Snapper Point around 9 a.m., he disposed of Michelle's body and took some photographs of the area. Afterwards, Derek visited his parents, who didn't notice anything unusual in his behavior. He then returned home to wait for his wife's return. With complete calmness, he reported several times that he hadn't seen Michelle and that she hadn't come home. Cynically, he accompanied his wife to the police station to file a missing person report. The Derek judicial hearing was held on June 29, 2016. Bill Whitby, Derek's lawyer, informed the local Bowood court that his client pleaded not guilty and was as shocked and grief-stricken by Michelle's death as the rest of the family. Michelle's friends and family filled the courtroom, but Derek didn't need to be present. He later appeared via video conference. A day before the hearing, the accused had stated that he didn't remember much about the hours leading up to Michelle's murder due to his use of illegal drugs. He also informed the court that he only had vague memories of the 2-hour trip to Snapper Point, where he threw Michelle's body off the cliff. Before the court hearing, Derek underwent a psychological evaluation. However, forensic psychologist Dr. Richard challenged Derek's claims of memory loss. Dr. Richard testified that Derek was mentally fit to receive the full sentence for his actions. He explained that the drugs Derek had been taking were not known to cause memory loss. Dr. Richard argued that all of Derek's actions, from the murder to the disposal of the body, were deliberate and purposeful. He also reported that Derek's IQ, concentration, and memory were within normal ranges. Furthermore, Dr. Richard dismissed Derek's claims of memory loss, stating that the high number of stab wounds suggested sadistic tendencies rather than emotional outbursts or memory lapses. This expert testimony significantly undermined Derek's defense. The psychologist also rejected Derek's claim that he had no sexual attraction towards the victim. Derek tied up, gagged, and stabbed the young girl 30 times, but he claimed to have no memory of these acts. Dr. Richard also told the court that the accused was faking amnesia to lessen his responsibility for the crime, after claiming not to remember the period during which he had apprehended and killed Michelle. During the trial, Derek tried to explain his crime by claiming to be addicted to illegal drugs. However, this claim was also questioned by the doctor. Richard pointed out that Derek's statement was contradictory, as it was obvious that Derek had gained weight during this period. Judge Wilson stated that in his 30 years as a criminal defense lawyer, he had never seen an obese person addicted to substances. During a court hearing in Sydney, Derek's demeanor exhibited characteristics often associated with psychopathy. His crime was not attributed to intoxication, poor decision-making, or a history of abuse. At a retrial in August, Derek admitted to murdering and kidnapping Michelle, as well as secretly entering her room on 2 occasions while she slept to make videos. He also confessed to taking 19 explicit photographs of Michelle shortly before her death. Derek claimed he had no recollection of the 48-hour period surrounding the murder, including cleaning the crime scene and disposing of the body, due to being under the influence of illegal substances. He stated that his only memories were of an argument, blood in the bathroom, and his niece's terrified face as she screamed at him. Judge Wilson dismissed Derek's claims of memory loss and lack of remorse as insincere. The Michelle family comforted each other while Derek tearfully insisted he deserved to live and expressed regret for his actions. Judge Wilson described the crime as depraved and brutal, carried out by a trusted relative. As the judge recounted Derek's fantasies and actions, he stared at the floor, no longer reveling in the attention. It was clear his attempts to deceive had failed. Despite claiming drug-induced memory lapses, the events were likely vivid in his mind. Throughout the court proceedings, Derek remained stoic, repeatedly uttering his victim's name. In his statement to the court, Chief Inspector Gary Jubilant from the NSW Police Homicide Unit described the crime as horrific and senseless. He expressed satisfaction that justice was served but emphasized that there was no happiness in such a case. Judge Wilson handed down a sentence of 34 years and 6 months to 28-year-old Derek Barrett, with a maximum term of 46 years. Barrett will be eligible for parole in 2050. He remained emotionless as the sentence was delivered. Michelle Leng's mother expressed her gratitude to both the Australian and Chinese communities for their support during this difficult time of grief. She specifically acknowledged the efforts of the NSW police, particularly Detective Inspector Gary Jubilant from the Homicide Squad, for their work in investigating her daughter's death. To assist with funeral expenses and provide financial support for Mrs. Leng when she returns to China, a fund has been established. Michelle's tragic story took an unexpected turn 4 years after her death. During a routine visit to her elderly mother, a woman made a shocking discovery. She found her mother holding an unfamiliar USB drive in the kitchen. Curious about its contents, the daughter plugged the device into her computer. To her horror, she found it contained disturbing videos and photos of a sexual nature. Alarmed, she immediately contacted the police. Upon investigation, authorities discovered that the USB drive held 9 video files totaling over an hour in length, as well as 13 photo files. These files documented the abuse Michelle endured shortly before her murder on April 23, 2016, providing crucial evidence in the case. The woman had no apparent connection to Derek and lived about 6 kilometers from his former home. The origin of the USB device and how it ended up in the woman's family home is unknown. The police were able to link the photos found on the USB to those Derek had deleted from his phone before his arrest, in an attempt to hide his crimes. In 2020, Derek was charged with several sexual offenses after videos of him abusing Michelle were discovered on the USB device in November 2019. However, the police and prosecutors admitted they had hit a dead end regarding the discovery of the device, which led to the new charges. The prosecutor Hugh Baker informed the court that the elderly woman with dementia was confined to her home and only went out to the yard. There's no explanation for how the USB ended up in the woman's possession at the residence in Strathfield, Hugh told the court. Based on new facts and evidence, Derek's sentence was extended without the possibility of parole after images accidentally found revealed the full extent of his abuse against Michelle before murdering her. This horrible and depraved secret, discovered by chance in the hands of an elderly woman in a leafy Sydney suburb, resulted in additional years of well-deserved punishment for the convicted criminal, on top of his already lengthy sentence. The tragic case of Michelle Leng serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. Michelle, a vibrant young woman with dreams of a bright future, fell victim to a betrayal from within her own family. The harrowing details of her story reveal the depths of human depravity and the complexities of trust and betrayal. As justice was ultimately served, it leaves a lingering sense of sorrow for the life cut short and a call to honor Michelle's memory by remaining vigilant against such heinous acts in our communities.
Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Stephanie Scott. Stephanie Scott is 26 years old, a kind and intelligent person who always has a smile on her face. She was very active as a child, participating in school clubs and sports. As an adult, she followed in her father Robert's footsteps as a teacher, sharing his passion for education. She teaches English and drama at Leon High School and takes great pride in her work. Stephanie and her fiancé Aaron have known each other since they were children. They spent time together, shared common interests, and played sports in their hometown. They were best friends until Aaron turned 21, when their relationship blossomed into love. In April 2015, the couple was busy preparing for their wedding, scheduled for April 11th. Stephanie, a perfectionist, spent months planning every detail, from the preparations to their honeymoon in Tahiti. She had just had her bachelorette party and the couple had learned their first dance for their wedding day. Everything was almost ready, but sadly their dream did not come true. April 2015 was a reminder to Stephanie and Aaron that their wedding day was approaching. While Aaron had plans to attend a party in the suburbs, he invited Stephanie to come along, but she decided to stay and focus on finishing up work before their honeymoon. On Easter Sunday, April 5, 2015, Stephanie arrived at her school in Leon, New South Wales, at around 11 a.m. to hand over some work to her teacher. She parked her car on the street and walked to meet a colleague, with whom she unlocked the school gate. Stephanie then locked the gate and, key in hand, headed to the English teacher's office. There, she emailed a bus company to confirm transportation arrangements for her wedding guests. Stephanie spent a few hours working, feeling happy that she had completed all her tasks. When she was done, she left the administration building, heading toward the gate to leave. Aaron, knowing that Stephanie had left and would be away for a few hours, became anxious as the evening approached. He had texted her the day before and received a prompt response. However, on April 5th, he received no response from Stephanie. Returning home after 7 p.m., Aaron found that Stephanie had not returned, and her car was not on the street. He tried to control his anxiety, reassuring himself that the stress of the upcoming wedding and being away from school for such a long time might be affecting Stephanie, making her want some alone time. However, such complete silence was out of character for her. Even as she eagerly planned her wedding, Stephanie enjoyed every minute, eagerly sharing details about her wedding dress and menu. She did not appear nervous or bored, but instead excited and ready for her big day. Aaron's concern for Stephanie grew, and he couldn't sleep. The next morning, he sent her another text, but when he didn't receive a response, he decided to contact her family for support. It had been more than 24 hours since he had been unable to reach Stephanie, prompting Aaron to go to the Leon Police Department to officially report her missing. Police opened an investigation, beginning with a search of the area around Stephanie's last known location. When they discovered that her car was also missing, they began to speculate about what might have happened. One possible scenario was that Stephanie had left school and gotten into a car accident, or perhaps gotten stuck in a ditch or creek. A search effort was launched, with helicopters scanning the area from above and police units conducting ground searches. Last known location of the high school where she worked. Affected by Easter Sunday and the limited number of people at the school, there were few witnesses, complicating the police investigation. When they checked the school's alarm system, they discovered that Stephanie had turned it off in her classroom at 1:30 p.m. and turned it back on 8 minutes later, pinpointing her exact location at that time. However, this detail was the only information the police were able to gather. When they attempted to track Stephanie's phone, they discovered that it was turned off and there was no recent activity on her bank account or social media after Saturday, April 4th. Local news began reporting the story on April 7th, as hundreds of people in the small town searched for any information about Stephanie. Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, expressed concern that if her daughter was not found soon, it could indicate that something terrible had happened. Police refocused their search efforts on the school, using digital mapping technology to examine the premises and pinpoint the specific room where Stephanie was last seen working before she went missing. A witness who was near Leon High School on Easter Sunday reported hearing unusual noises around 2 p.m., including rustling and dragging sounds. At the time, the witness did not think much of seeing Stephanie's car parked under the covered walkway. However, the car was gone by then. Another witness, a school employee, had a strange conversation with a cleaner the day after Stephanie went missing. The employee mentioned the rumors surrounding Stephanie's disappearance to the cleaner and asked when he had last seen her. The cleaner replied that he had not seen Stephanie on the day she went missing. When asked if he thought Stephanie might have run away due to post-wedding stress, the cleaner smiled strangely and nervously, making the employee feel uncomfortable. The employee also noticed that the cleaner had scratches on her face. The police decided to question the cleaner, 24-year-old Vincent Stanford, for more information. Vincent told the police that he had stopped by the school to take out the trash, despite not being scheduled to work that day. He claimed that he did not stay long because he was in a hurry to go shopping. Vincent insisted that he had not seen Stephanie at the time and wished them luck in their search. He added that he had left the school after 3 p.m. to go to the store where he usually shopped. However, when the police contacted the store, they discovered that it was closed that day, contrary to Vincent's statement. This led the police to suspect Vincent of lying, and he became a suspect in the investigation. The police decided to conduct a thorough interview with Vincent and went to his home where he lived with his mother. When they arrived, they found Vincent absent, but his mother allowed them to enter the house. The police search of the house eventually uncovered a set of keys attached to a red and white string. These keys were very similar to the missing Stephanie's keys. As the police continued to collect evidence, Vincent returned home and was immediately arrested by the police, while his car was also impounded. In the back seat, they found several MDF boards that appeared to be covered in blood. The police also noticed that the tire marks in front of the house did not match those of Vincent's car. Additionally, a used condom was found on the ground with the wrapper in the bedroom. The police questioned Vincent about his whereabouts that day. He pointed to a camera in the front seat and claimed that he was taking pictures. The police asked to see the contents of the camera, and Vincent reluctantly agreed. When they turned on the camera, they saw a horrifying image of a charred, dead woman lying in a wooded area. Vincent initially tried to dismiss the image as a still from a movie he had starred in, thinking it was funny. However, the police quickly realized that the image was actually a photo of a real crime scene, with the victim being Stephanie. Vincent Stanford, a janitor at Leon High School, was immediately arrested. A search of his phone and laptop revealed a collection of images, including photos of young girls from school and from the internet, as well as photos of women he had apparently stalked. The discovery painted a dark picture of Vincent's behavior. Although Stephanie Scott's body has not been found, Vincent Stanford, 24, was charged with murder on April 9. News of the arrest spread quickly. Stephanie's car had previously been found abandoned in a remote area about 5 miles from where she was last known to be. However, her body remains missing, prompting the search to continue. Police are still working to determine the exact location where her body was photographed. On April 17, 5 days after Stephanie went missing, another witness came forward. He reported seeing a car near a canal around 4 p.m. on Easter Sunday. A man got out of the car and threw what appeared to be a laptop into the water before driving away. Police later recovered the laptop from the bottom of the canal, confirming it was Stephanie's. The search for Stephanie's body continues in the New South Wales Rivers area, where police divers have been scouring the waterways. Reporter Natalie Cooper, in a live broadcast, discussed the ongoing search for Stephanie's body. Meanwhile, police have expanded their search to fields and vineyards near where Stephanie's red Mazda was found earlier this week. Despite a search by police divers in the canal, Stephanie's body has not been found. Reporter Natalie reported that a makeshift shrine near the site of the tragedy was visited by many people that morning. Bystanders and her family and fiancé had visited the shrine the night before, surname lighting candles and praying together. Vincent, who was in police custody, asked to speak to the police. During the conversation, he gave them detailed information about the case, including the location of Stephanie's body. According to Vincent, on the day of the incident, Stephanie was working on her computer in the upstairs staff room with the office door open. Vincent was using a vacuum to clean out the trash and needed to move some bins upstairs. As he approached the room, he saw Stephanie. Vincent told the police that he suddenly had the idea of killing her and quickly went home to get his special kit, which included handcuffs, Viagra, a knife, and toiletries. He also did a Google search on violent crimes on the way back. On his way back, Vincent encountered Stephanie as she was leaving. She smiled and wished him a happy Easter as she passed by. However, in a sudden and unexpected move, Vincent grabbed her and dragged her into a nearby storage room. When police questioned him about the scratches on his face, he revealed that they were from Stephanie's microphone and her fingernails when she defended herself while he tried to kill her. Vincent described the attack on Stephanie in detail, saying that he approached her from behind, covered her mouth with one hand and held her waist with the other. He took her to the storage room, slamming the door. Inside, he violently threw her to the ground, hitting her repeatedly. After the attack, Vincent used a knife to kill Stephanie. He admitted that the act was motivated by homicidal urges, revealing that he had sadistic thoughts and had committed murders before. Although he speculated that he may have had some psychological issues, Vincent said that he did not hate his victims but instead felt pleasure from the act of killing. Vincent then felt hungry and went home to eat a sandwich and drink coffee, leaving Stephanie's body in the storage room. After eating, he returned to the school and placed her body in the trunk of his car. He then drove home. On Easter Monday, Vincent took Stephanie's car and drove to a national park. There, he removed her body from the trunk and removed her clothes. He observed that her face had multiple injuries, including severe bruising and swelling on the right side of her face, as well as bruising under her eye. Vincent then covered the body with branches and poured gasoline over her. He lit the gasoline with a match. Before leaving, he stayed at the scene for a while and took several photographs. After setting up the camera to take pictures of Stephanie's body, Vincent waited 5 minutes to ensure the fire had burned out before leaving the scene. He abandoned Stephanie's car on a deserted country road and walked back to town. During questioning, Vincent denied abusing Stephanie despite police evidence suggesting he had abused her, leading to additional charges of causing grievous bodily harm and injury. When questioned about her earrings and wedding ring, he claimed he did not remember taking them off and may have thrown them away with the other items. In fact, Vincent took Stephanie's wedding ring and graduation ring, along with her earrings, and sent them to his twin brother, Marcus, in Adelaide. Marcus sold the items at a jewelry store and later destroyed Stephanie's driver's license after taking a photo of it. Vincent's brother Marcus Stanford, 24, was arrested at his Adelaide Hills home around 7 a.m. in connection with Stephanie's murder, leaving neighbors shocked and unsettled. Marcus, who appeared inconspicuous, worked on a flower farm, where colleagues described him as quiet and reserved, barely communicating with them outside of work hours. Marcus Stanford appeared without a lawyer during the trial and, with a strong Dutch accent, told the judge he had never been to Leeton and saw no reason to go there. Despite his testimony, he was taken to Sydney the following morning under police escort, where he was taken into custody. The search for Stephanie finally ended. Following Vincent's confession, police discovered her body in a national park 60 miles from Leon's secondary school. Detailed investigations revealed that Stephanie had been brutally beaten in the head a total of 40 times, resulting in her death. Her body was then dumped and burned. Photos found on Vincent's phone were confirmed to be of Stephanie, leaving no doubt as to his guilt. Both Vincent and his brother, Marcus, were subsequently brought to trial. Vincent initially denied any wrongdoing. However, based on the evidence presented by the police, it was decided that the case could lead to a conviction. Vincent was deemed a dangerous serial killer. He appeared to lack emotion and empathy, was cruel and indifferent, often laughing and not taking the situation seriously. A deeper look into Vincent Stanford's past revealed a number of disturbing facts. Born in Australia, Vincent moved to the Netherlands with his family when he was 3 years old before eventually returning to New South Wales. As a child, Vincent had disturbing thoughts. At age 7, he fantasized about murder. By age 12, he had nearly strangled a teacher, leading his classmates to label him a psychopath. Due to his violent and disobedient behavior issues, Vincent was sent to a reform school. He later expressed feelings of being unable to fit in with society and was later admitted to a psychiatric facility where he was diagnosed with autism and oppositional defiant disorder. Vincent was rejected by both the university and the army after his release, so he worked a variety of jobs until he landed a job as a janitor at Leon Junior High School. His initial 5-week contract was later extended, allowing him to continue working at the school. During his time there, Vincent would often sneak into the girls' restroom during lunch breaks to secretly observe the students. An investigation of Vincent's phone revealed that he had been stalking several girls at the school, as well as 2 women who worked at nearby stores, before finally killing Stephanie. Police discovered a large collection of photos, nearly 2,000, of a young girl on his phone, along with diary entries documenting his obsession with the girl. In these diary entries, Vincent detailed his attempts to follow the girl home, recording her departures and even speculating about whether anyone else was with her. One diary entry stated, "She was home alone at 3:40 p.m., plenty of time to kidnap her." It appears that Vincent initially targeted the young girl, but once she left town, he shifted his focus to Stephanie, who worked at the school and was ultimately his victim. After a thorough search of Vincent's car, police found evidence of Stephanie's DNA on MDF boards. Inside Vincent's house, they discovered Stephanie's blood on several items, a knife, several condom packs, and her bra. Vincent's twin brother, Marcus, admitted to his role in the crime, including selling Stephanie's ring, destroying evidence, and helping Vincent cover up the truth. As a result, Marcus was sentenced to 15 months in prison without the possibility of parole. His sentence was for his involvement in the murder of Stephanie Scott, and his prison term was set to end on September 9, 2016. If Marcus had not pleaded guilty, he would have received an 18-month sentence. In October 2016, Marcus Stanford was released from prison. After his release, more than 60 people signed a petition expressing their disagreement with the court's decision and asking for an appeal. The petition describes the court's decision as unacceptable. After his release, Marcus briefly returned to his hometown of Leon with his mother. However, people in his hometown made it clear that he was not welcome, forcing him to leave again. His current whereabouts are unknown. Since his release, Marcus has publicly apologized for his actions and promised not to cause any more trouble. He has admitted that his past behavior was foolish and has expressed remorse for the harm he has caused. Marcus has also stated that he has no intention of contacting his brother Vincent and does not want to reconcile with him. Steve, the twins' father, he is shocked, scared, and does not want to talk to or see Vincent. Steve admits that he does not understand why Vincent committed these crimes. Vincent Stanford was sentenced to life in prison for murder and 15 years for sexual violence, both sentences effective April 8, 2015. Stephanie's mother, Marilyn, expressed her grief, saying that Vincent could not cope with his own life, so he took her daughter's life. Marilyn believed that this deprived Stephanie of the chance to have a happy future. Although the family did not know the full extent of Stephanie's pain, they knew that she had suffered unbearable pain. Therefore, the family wanted to stay away from the public to mourn their daughter and overcome the pain. In the future, Stephanie's family members have decided not to participate in interviews or television shows or answer questions. However, they have planned a final celebration. The day after the trial, Stephanie's family planned a gathering to remember her life on what would have been her 28th birthday, a birthday they would celebrate for the second time without her. They held a 3 p.m. tea party with peppermint cookies, which Stephanie's mother invited everyone to attend. In addition, the family is campaigning for stricter background checks and assessments for school staff in the hope of preventing incidents like the one that affected Stephanie and reducing the risk to students. After Stephanie's tragic death, the family suffered another tragic loss when her father, Robert, died in an accident involving a falling tree. He was buried near his daughter. Her boyfriend, Aaron, in an attempt to escape the painful memories of New South Wales, moved to Europe. However, he eventually found love again and became engaged to a woman named Samantha 5 years after Stephanie's death. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rachel Anderson. Rachel Anderson is a 24-year-old female born on January 28, 1994, in Warren, Ohio, to William Bill Anderson and Patricia Trish Anderson. She has a younger brother named John, who was favored by the family. Rachel graduated from Warren Harding High School in 2012, where she was a member of the National Honor Society and played on the soccer and volleyball teams. From a young age, Rachel aspired to become a funeral director, a unique career choice. She moved on to Youngstown State University, focusing on the study of deceased individuals. Her dedication to her studies earned her recognition as one of the top students, along with a scholarship. Following this, she attended the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science, graduating in 2016 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Mortuary Science. After joining the Ohio Funeral Directors Association, Rachel relocated to Columbus to start her internship at Shaw Davis Funeral Home. She took her role seriously, believing it was her responsibility to help the families of the deceased. As her internship was nearing its conclusion, Rachel hoped to become a permanent employee at the funeral home. However, her dream was suddenly and tragically shattered. Rachel's body was taken to the morgue, and investigators began interviewing the first witnesses. The autopsy on Rachel revealed the details of the brutal assault she suffered that night. She had been both strangled and stabbed. Specifically, she had a cut on her scalp and fractures at the base of her skull. The stab wound entered through the back of her neck and penetrated the left side of her brain, indicating extreme force that caused a portion of her skull to break off. The autopsy also found that she had been strangled with a cord from an electric blanket. The strangulation caused bleeding in her sternoclavicular muscles and eyelids, and the blood vessels in her eyes had burst, leading to noticeable redness. Forensic evidence revealed bruises and red marks on her ankles and wrists, indicating she was alive when the perpetrator tied her up. A DNA sample was discovered on the rope and Rachel's body. The coroner who conducted Rachel's autopsy determined that her death resulted from a stab wound to the head and neck, despite the initial theory suggesting strangulation. After interviewing various employees from Rachel's workplace and her ex-boyfriend, who had an alibi, the police continued to explore different possibilities regarding the attack. Detectives returned to Rachel's apartment to search for evidence or clues about the perpetrator. On the living room floor, they discovered Rachel's purse, which was missing her wallet. 2 weeks after the crime, Rachel's mother found the 9-inch steak knife used to stab her in a box in her apartment. However, the brutal nature of Rachel's torture suggests that the perpetrator was not simply a thief, but a psychopath who enjoyed abusing his power over his victims. Investigators explored various motives, but initially had no suspects. The details of Rachel's death were kept confidential to protect the investigation. Eventually, DNA samples were collected from different parts of Rachel's body and the crime scene. Unfortunately, these samples did not match any samples in the Special Services database. The video footage from street surveillance cameras captured 2 individuals using Rachel's car to drive around the city after her death. During this period, cash was withdrawn from her debit and credit cards. Location data identified a phone number that was in Rachel's apartment between 7:59 p.m. and 9:25 p.m. on January 28, 2018. Analyzing the evidence revealed the caller's whereabouts at various times. Once the account associated with the phone number was identified, investigators found the suspect, 54-year-old Anthony Pardon. He had a criminal history that included multiple rapes, robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Overall, he served 33 years in prison for his crimes. Anthony had a difficult upbringing. He was initially raised by his grandparents and later moved in with his mother. As a child, he was diagnosed with conduct disorder and antisocial personality disorder. In March 1979, at the age of 14, Anthony was briefly committed to the Ohio Youth Commission. By July of the same year, he was placed under court custody and transferred to Franklin County Children's Services. In December, he was again found guilty of making threats, leading to another transfer to the Ohio Youth Commission, where he was placed in foster care. In 1980, Anthony was charged with abuse, involving his foster parents' 15-year-old son. Then, he informed Columbus police that he committed the crime because he was upset after an argument with his girlfriend. As a result, Anthony was convicted as a juvenile. On November 13, 1981, when Anthony was 16, he visited his girlfriend's 39-year-old mother to use the telephone. During this visit, he threatened her with a butcher knife, assaulted her, and stole $100 from her purse. He tied her hands and feet, gagged her, and placed her in the trunk of his car. He drove to Valleydale, where he untied her feet and threw her into the river behind the Valleydale ballroom. When he noticed that the partially clothed she was able to stay afloat, he entered the creek and held her head underwater. Fortunately, a passerby intervened and scared him away, allowing she to survive. Anthony fled the scene before the police arrived and used the money he had stolen from her to buy tennis shoes and jogging clothes. In May 1982, at the age of 17, he had been convicted of other crimes in Franklin and received a prison sentence ranging from 5 to 25 years. While incarcerated, he committed several rule violations, such as possessing a weapon, setting a mattress on fire, and engaging in fights. He ultimately spent more than 24 years in prison for his offenses and was released in November 2006. After his release, Anthony relocated to Georgia and applied for a job using a different name. In 2007, Anthony was charged with forgery papers and convicted in Floyd County, within a 9-year prison sentence. After serving his time, he received 20 years of probation and were required to wear a GPS ankle monitor. He was released from prison in 2017 and returned to Ohio in June of that year. According to an interstate agreement between Ohio and Georgia, he was supervised by the Adult Parole Authority and had to report to the Sheriff's Department every 90 days. The Ohio Adult Parole Authority did not give him a monitor, as the judge had requested. And Anthony was free once more. On August 21, 2017, he was found with a sex worker in his car, and 6 days later, he was caught driving without a license. During that traffic stop, police discovered he had a kitchen knife and a shotgun, but for some unknown reason, or due to police negligence, he was not arrested. Therefore, he is still continuing to commit crimes. CCTV footage captured Rachel's car parked outside a store. A man exited the passenger side of the car and entered the store. The driver was not visible in the footage. This makes the investigation more difficult than ever. However, after visiting the store and speaking with the employees, the police were able to identify the man. He was named Slits. A few days later, Slits was questioned at the police station. He said an adult man passing by approached him and offered to exchange his ex-girlfriend's card for cash. He agreed to this arrangement, which made him a co-conspirator in the Rachel case. Slits confirmed the identity of Anthony and detailed the entire route they took on the evening of January 28, 2018, while trying to cash in Rachel's stolen cards. The issue at hand was to locate and arrest Anthony. On February 9, 2018, after several days of track at Anthony's sister's house, he was successfully apprehended. The 54-year-old, who had a history of crime, faced 9 charges, including burglary, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, rape, and aggravated murder. The trial commenced on February 4, 2020. On the first day of the trial, 4 witnesses provided their testimonies. Among them was Jonathan, a co-worker of Rachel, who found her body. He, along with the manager of Rachel's apartment complex, shared their accounts. The jury also heard testimony from Officer Frank Scani, who was parked outside the apartment when Jonathan discovered the body Rachel's and reviewed the surveillance footage. On February 5th, Rachel's brother, John, and Special Agent Joshua Durst took the stand. Lead Detective Art Hughes testified the following day, on February 6th. On that same day, Anthony expressed dissatisfaction with his attorneys to the judge and requested new representation. He appeared to be deliberately delaying the proceedings. On Monday, February 10th, the prosecutors called a fingerprint expert and other specialists to explain how technology helped determine where Rachel's debit card was used and at the crime scene. Anthony's sister testified that he gave her Rachel's debit card, claiming it belonged to his girlfriend. She later discovered, through news reports, that the card actually belonged to the crime victim, Rachel. The final day of testimony was Tuesday, February 11th. The medical examiner reported finding Anthony's DNA at the scene, while a forensic pathologist and a deputy coroner from the Franklin County office detailed Rachel's injuries. In the courtroom, the final moments of Rachel's life were carefully reconstructed. She celebrated her 24th birthday on January 26th and 27th, 2018. Her brother, John, traveled from Warren to Columbus to visit her. The following day, she and John went to the home of her friend and colleague, Jonathan, where they held a birthday party for she. After a long night of celebration, Rachel and her brother stayed overnight at their friend's house. The next morning, Rachel left for work, leaving her apartment key with her brother. On the 28th, John returned to his hometown and accidentally brought Rachel's house key with her. At around 1 p.m., Rachel texted John, person holding her house keys, to let him know she would come over to pick it up. Rachel talked to her mother around 6:30 p.m. and then went to John's place to get her key. Since her apartment door could only be locked from the outside with a key, she had to leave it open. After stopping for dinner at her favorite restaurant, Rachel arrived back at her apartment around 7:30 p.m. She then left the apartment, and Anthony was waiting for her outside. He kidnapped Rachel, taking her from the ground floor to the top floor. He used force to pin her down, then tying her legs with a hair dryer cord and her hands with a belt and curtain cord. Once she was unable to move, he wrapped a curling iron cord around her wrists to silence her and gagged her. He forced Rachel to provide him with the PIN numbers for her cards. He tortured her and exploited her vulnerability. Ultimately, he strangled her with a cord from an electric blanket. In addition to strangulation, he also caused blunt force trauma and inflicted a stab wound to her head. Afterward, he concealed her body in a closet, leaving her naked from the waist down with the electric blanket cord around her neck and the door handle. Anthony stole her car and used her bank cards at various stores in Columbus to make quick money. The defense did not present any witnesses. The final hearing took place on February 12. Assistant Prosecutor Amy Van Keulen gave the state's argument, outlining the timeline of the crime and telling the jury that Anthony murdered Rachel in cold blood. In his argument, the defense attorney, Larry Thomas, admitted that Anthony used Rachel's cards but said that he was not responsible for the murder. Attorney Larry argued that the state's case was based on mere speculation. He said that DNA evidence and cell phone data were not enough to prove Anthony's involvement in the crime. The jury, consisting of 4 men and 8 women, spent about 6 hours over 2 days discussing the case, before finding him guilty on all charges. The prosecution sought the death penalty because he killed Rachel during a burglary and he had previously been convicted of the attempted murder of a similar woman. They opted for the death penalty instead of seeking clemency because of his extensive criminal history. Prosecutor O.B. Bryan remarked that some individuals cannot follow the law, and Anthony is one of them. The sentencing phase of the trial started on February 18th. The defense aimed to lessen the severity of the punishment by highlighting Anthony's difficult childhood, but this argument was not effective. Prosecutors contended that the negative factors in the case were more significant than any positive ones. Additionally, it was established during the trial that Anthony understood his actions when he assaulted Rachel. Testimonies in Anthony's defense were given by his mother, sister, a psychologist, and his former elementary school teacher. On February 19, Anthony gave a 13-minute speech before the jury, sharing details about his abusive childhood. He shared the struggles he encountered after his release from prison, expressing feelings of hardship and despair. He claimed that the law system let him down and that he received no support. And he attributed his current situation to the failures of the justice system. However, he neither addressed the crime he committed nor offered any apology in his remarks. On February 20th, after 3.5 hours of deliberation, the jury was unable to reach a consensus on whether to recommend the death penalty. Instead, they decided to recommend life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentencing occurred on March 16, 2020. Rachel's mother cried in court when the verdict was announced. Her father issued a sharing his thoughts on the investigation he had witnessed over the past few years. He was shocked to look a dangerous repeat offender making outrageous demands and acting as if he was entitled to something. He also was astonished to see an adult complaining about the system's shortcomings while trying to evade responsibility. Judge McIntosh sentenced Anthony Pardon to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole, one for aggravated murder and another for violence. Furthermore, he received an additional 63 years for aggravated burglary, kidnapping, aggravated robbery, and several violent offenses. These sentences are to be served one after the other. Rachel's 24th birthday turned into a tragic day. A young woman with a bright future ahead of her had her life unexpectedly cut short. She was finishing up her internship and was on the verge of receiving a promising job offer. Rachel was laid to rest at Pine View Memorial Park, leaving her family and friends struggling to cope with the sudden loss. Every year on January 28, Rachel's family and friends light a candle at home to remember her. Rachel was a lively person with a beautiful smile and a loving heart. She was kind and always willing to help her friends. Throughout her life, she had many interests, but her main focus was her career. Rachel was naturally compassionate, loved dancing, and cherished time spent with family and friends. She had a special love for children and valued her life, which was sadly taken away too soon. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Antonia Barra. Antonia Barra was born in the late 1980s into a warm and united family. Her family lived in a spacious home that comfortably accommodated. Her parents, Alejandro and Marcela, nurtured their 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son, creating a warm environment filled with care and attention. The children were generally kind and well-behaved, rarely causing trouble. However, Antonia distinguished herself from her siblings with her exceptional perceptiveness, sense of responsibility, and ambition from an early age, making her a special source of pride for her parents. Antonia was a top student who had a good relationship with her teachers and clear future goals. She dreamed of traveling and leading a fulfilling life. After graduating high school, she was accepted into her preferred university and began studying a popular major. As a freshman, she focused on mastering the fundamentals of her future career, while also engaging in social and academic events, where she made new friends who shared her interests and ambitions. One of her closest friends was Consuela Uribe, a law student. They enjoyed spending time together, going out, shopping, and attending parties. This brings them even close. Martin was born and raised in Tomoko, Chile, the same city as Antonia. He comes from a large family, including parents, a sister, and a brother. When he was young, he had a child with a woman named Daniela Alvarez, but their relationship ended shortly right after they give birth. From 2015 to 2017, Antonia and Martin communicated through a social network. At that time, Antonia was a teenager. They exchanged messages and commented on each other's photos, but their interactions were limited to online communication. Eventually, they met in person, which sadly resulted in a tragic outcome. When Antonia broke up with her boyfriend Rodrigo, Consuela suggested that she find a way to distract herself from the sadness. Struggling with the breakup, Antonia decided to take her friend's advice to help clear her mind and forget her troubles for a while. They planned a trip to celebrate Chile's Independence Day on September 18th, choosing the tourist town of Pucón as their destination. By chance, Antonia encountered Martin there. He was in Pucón to attend an electronic music festival at a local club called Black Room, where a DJ friend of his was performing. On September 17th, around 6:30 p.m., Consuela, Antonia, and 3 friends, including Consuela's boyfriend, headed to Pucón. The trip went well, and upon arrival, they stayed in different accommodations. The girls stayed at a summer house owned by the Consuela family. After 8 p.m., they started getting ready for a party at the popular venue, Black Room, which promised to be an unforgettable experience. Before leaving, Antonia messaged her father, Alejandro, who reminded her to be careful and cautious with strangers. She replied, assuring him that being prudent was her top priority. Antonia and Consuela got ready and went to the club, where they ordered food and drinks. Antonia and Martin had a great time chatting and dancing. The Black Room Club turned out to be the perfect place for their unexpected reunion. They were delighted by this chance meeting and spent the evening together, enjoying each other's company. It was clear they had a mutual affection. Antonia would occasionally join Consuela and greet the male acquaintances she had traveled with, moving between different bars. However, she didn't realize how much she had consumed. The combination of the long drive and an empty stomach contributed to her inebriation, which was unusual for her. Around 6:45 a.m., Consuela found her friend Antonia happily chatting with a mutual acquaintance, Emilio. Consuela suggested it was time to leave, but Antonia insisted on staying, feeling good and wanting to enjoy the night longer. Despite Consuela's advice to stop drinking and rethink her choice, Antonia remained determined to stay at the club while Consuela went home. This decision would later prove to be a mistake for Antonia. Emilio, who was there, became a witness to what happened next and provided details during the investigation and in court. He observed that Martin approached Antonia, started a conversation, and then took her by the hand to lead her toward the exit. Emilio noticed that Antonia was acting strangely. He wasn't sure if Antonia was participating in the conversation or simply confused by the alcohol. However, she didn't seem to mind being taken away, or maybe she didn't even realize it was happening. Emilio believed that Martin had asked her to join him and that she had agreed. However, the external surveillance footage revealed a different version of events. Martin's friends reported that they left the club in 2 cars, but there wasn't enough space for Martin and Antonia in either vehicle, so they decided to walk. As they walked, they encountered a store. Surveillance footage showed that Martin forced Antonia to go inside. She was unsteady and unable to fight back. Martin, who was a bit more sober, managed to exert some control over the situation. They were recorded on camera multiple times throughout the night. During their time together, Martin was overly affectionate and attempted to kiss Antonia, but she did not reciprocate and tried to stay away. Once they arrived at the rented house, the other friends paid little attention to she. Only Barbara, a 19 years old who had just joined and wasn't drinking, noticed that the couple appeared to be drunk. Later, they went upstairs. Around 9 a.m., Consuela received a voice message from Antonia. At first, she found it difficult to understand the message. After listening closely, she deciphered that Antonia was asking to be picked up. Since Antonia couldn't share her exact location, Consuela used GPS to locate her. Consuela and her boyfriend, Jose, then headed to the specified location. When Consuela and Jose entered the house, they found Martin naked and using a pillow to cover himself. Consuela asked him where Antonia was, but he said he didn't know. They then went upstairs and discovered Antonia in a bedroom, lying on the bed in her underwear and quietly crying. Jose picked her up and took her to the car. Consuela asked what had happened, but Antonia could only cry sob. Consuela and Jose tried to comfort her by hugging her and encouraging her to talk. Once they arrived back at the summer house, Antonia opened up about everything. She revealed that Martin had taken advantage of her against her will, leaving her feeling helpless. Though her memories were blurry, she clearly understood that he had harmed her. This incident had taken place when they went upstairs, and afterward, he left her alone and vanished. After hearing about the incident, Jose and Consuela urged Antonia to report Martin to the police and seek justice. However, she was too afraid that her parents and the public would find out, so she decided to silently cope with her trauma and heal on her own. She asked them not to tell anyone about what happened. Then, Antonia received a message from her father checking in on her and joking about whether she had been drinking too much. To avoid raising suspicion, Consuela responded casually, which unintentionally revealed her true feelings. The next day, Antonia met with Martin to discuss what had happened, but he was dismissive and arrogant, insisting that the previous night's incidents were consensual. At that moment, Antonia understood that she would not receive the truth or an apology from him, and she knew she had to try to get through it. Antonia was suffering from intimacy trauma syndrome, which affects her physical, emotional, cognitive, and social behaviors. This condition can manifest right after a traumatic incident or even months or years later. Antonia was going through an intense phase of this syndrome alone, unable to escape feelings of distress, distraction, anxiety, and confusion, often alternating with hysterical outbursts and crying. Antonia experienced a strong desire to cleanse herself, which caused her nausea and occasional vomiting. For 3 weeks, she kept to herself and tried to behave as if everything was normal. A childhood friend remarked that they hadn't noticed anything unusual about her, but her classmates were aware of her memory loss and disorganization linked to the syndrome. One classmate noted that her grades had fallen, which was unexpected for someone who had always been a dedicated student. When asked about the cause, Antonia said that it to her poor health. Her terrible secret somehow got revealed to an ex-boyfriend, Rodrigo, but the details he received were distorted and negative. He quickly reported this to others. Antonia insisted she was not responsible for what had happened, claiming the information he had was greatly exaggerated, but he did not believe her. To make matters worse, the day before indents, Martin had called her, and it's unclear what they discussed, though it might have included threats from him. On the evening of October 13, 2019, Antonia family could never have imagined how the day would end. Carla, visiting their parents' home, went upstairs to greet her sister Antonia, expecting a simple conversation. However, when she found Antonia seemingly asleep, Carla decided not to disturb her and moved toward the door. Just before leaving, she heard Antonia ask about their mother and request the light to be turned off. After telling Carla she loved her, Antonia turned her face away. Carla thought maybe Antonia just tired or not in the mood. But she didn't know that Antonia was suffering from painful thoughts, making her feel that there was only one way to escape her suffering. By 7 p.m. that evening, Antonia's mother, Marcela, noticed there was no response coming from Antonia's room. When Marcela went in, she was met with a horrifying sight. Her daughter was hanging motionless above the floor. Marcela rushed to Antonia but found no signs of life. Stunned by the tragedy, she called for help from neighbors. Family friends assisted in taking down the body and contacted emergency services. Soon after, Antonia's father, Alejandro, spoke to the media, promising to discover the reasons behind his daughter's tragic choice and to pursue justice. Antonia was known for her lively personality and intelligence, indicating that something significant had deeply affected her. The autopsy later confirmed that she had died from self-strangulation. The situation required urgent action. Without waiting for official investigations, Antonia's parents took matters into their own hands and started their own inquiry. They hired private detectives who carefully reconstructed the last days of Antonia's life and discovered the person responsible for her distress. Alejandro and Marcela quickly reported Martin Pradenas to the police, suspect him of being the culprit. Law enforcement officials interviewed Martin multiple times, but he maintained that he did nothing wrong concerning Antonia. He asserted that their relationship was consensual and he denied any involvement in her tragic death. However, detectives had a different viewpoint and gathered evidence that contradicted his statements. The investigation revealed that Martin left Pucón on September 17 around noon with friends, and they intended to return the following day. Once they arrived at their destination, the group hosted a party at a rented house, filled with conversation, laughter, and, of course, alcohol. A few hours before Antonia passed away, she sent a goodbye message to Rodrigo and shared a childhood video in a family chat. In the video, Antonia was dancing and laughing happily, which highlighted how much she longed for her younger self. She realized she could never go back to her previous life. This tragedy has deeply affected everyone. Thanks to Alejandro, who found the courage to share his daughter's story on a national level, Antonia's tragedy began to resonate with the public. Her name appeared on posters, social media hashtags, and even on building walls. Public support has had a big impact. Within a week, several women came forward with similar allegations against Martin. 6 new charges were filed against him, detailing actions he took from 2010 to 2019. Ultimately, Martin was arrested for these crimes. Meanwhile, his family sought to protect their personal information, which had been leaked online. They claimed that their constitutional right to privacy was violated due to numerous insults, aggressive messages, and false information circulating online. The Martin family suspected the Antonia family of being involved in these leaks. On June 12, 2020, the Temuco court granted the Martin family's request, according to which, the Antonia family is not allowed to share any information about the Martin family on social media and to refrain from making damaging posts. The ruling has angered Chileans who feel it unfairly protected Martin. On July 21, the Antonia family appealed the decision to the Supreme Court, but their appeal was denied. Later that month, the lawyer for Martin filed a request for protective measures for his client. During the same period, he was formally charged with multiple attacks. Public anger in Chile intensified, leading to the investigation being referred to as the Antonia case. This case has come to represent the fight for justice for victims of violence. Many women, having stayed silent for years, started to share their own experiences. On July 22, the court decided to change Martin's preventive measure. He was transferred from detention to house arrest, that is, released from custody. The judge clarified that this decision did not reflect the final punishment. Although the prosecutor charged Martin with 5 counts of misconduct, the court only recognized 2 of them. This decision sparked massive protests across the country, with thousands of people taking to the streets in outrage over the halt of investigations into certain matters and the decision to place Martin under house arrest. In response to public outcry, the authorities filed a request with the appeals court. The judiciary acted quickly, revoking the house arrest and rearresting Martin. Later, the same court removed the statute of limitations for 2 cases of intimate violence. Meanwhile, Alejandro, along with feminist organizations, was working on a bill to establish penalties for such crimes. He stressed that everyone should be concerned when a woman is taken away by a man without resistance, particularly if she is intoxicated. He highlighted the necessity of taking action in these situations, as this vulnerability puts women at risk of becoming victims. The investigation progressed, and in February 2021, Martin's phone was found. Forensic analysis revealed that it contained photos of women's underwear, indicating that he took pride in his actions and kept records of them. The police report was extensive, totaling nearly 400 pages, and included statements from victims, witnesses, and people who knew both Martin and Antonia, including childhood acquaintances. Martin's former teacher described him as a bright and cheerful child, although he showed a strong interest in intimate subjects. Some women recalled that he had touched them when they were young, but at the time, no one considered it significant since they were all children. On June 14, 2022, the criminal court in Tomoko began hearings that were expected to last over a month. During this time, the prosecution presented evidence, expert testimonies, and witness statements. Video footage clearly showed that Antonia could not control the situation. On August 26, Martin was sentenced to 20 years in prison for crimes related to intimacy and aggressive behavior. However, on December 29, the Supreme Court accepted the defense's appeal, disagreeing with the original verdict, and a new trial was set for spring 2023. On March 16, the defendant's legal team withdrew from case, and public defense took over his case. On April 24, 2024, his second trial began, addressing 5 cases of violence and 2 cases of sexual assault. During the trial, Martin chose to speak and described what happened. He attributed his actions to the severe effects of alcohol. However, prosecutors argued that his drinking with the women made them vulnerable. On July 7, 2023, he was found guilty. The federal prosecution requested a 41-year prison sentence for Martin Pradines. On July 28, 2023, the 31-year-old was sentenced to 17 years in prison for 7 offenses related to sexual intimacy involving 6 victims. After accounting for the time he had already spent in custody, he would serve 14 years. The tragic case of Antonia highlighted the danger posed by Martin. It remains unclear how many other innocent women may have been affected by his actions. The line between harassment and flirting is very thin, and one can never anticipate when someone might cross that dangerous boundary. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Linda Cooney. On June 28, 2011, at approximately 8:30 a.m., Linda Cooney called the Las Vegas police. She was in a panic, reporting that her son Kevin had been shot in the neck and needed immediate help. When police and an ambulance arrived at their home, they found Kevin Cooney, 30, lying on the living room floor, bleeding. They quickly provided him with medical assistance. When the police arrived at the crime scene, they found several unusual details. Ammunition and weapons were scattered across the floor, which was not typical. They determined that the Kevin had been shot with Linda's pistol, but she could not identify who fired the weapon. There were no signs of forced entry into the house, and nothing appeared to be stolen, so they ruled out robbery as a motive. Linda was 63 years old at the time. She remained calm during the police interrogation. The interrogation lasted about an hour and was recorded. Linda insisted that she did not know who shot her son and denied any involvement, despite pressure from the police. When the police arrived, Kevin only had time to say that the shooting was an accident before he lost consciousness. He was rushed to the nearest medical center. Fortunately, Kevin survived, but his condition was serious and he would need a long time to recover. Linda's interrogation is ongoing. Police believe Kevin may have wanted to end his life. When Linda was questioned about this, she stated that he had tried to do so before. This situation required further investigation, and it was later revealed that there were more disturbing details involved in the case. During the investigation, it was discovered that a similar tragic shooting had occurred in the family 19 years earlier. Linda reported that Kevin had gone through a troubled adolescence, which had worsened after the death of his father. She informed the police that Kevin had repeatedly threatened to end his life. Even as an adult, Kevin continued to exhibit unstable behavior. Linda recounted an incident just hours before the shooting, at approximately 1 a.m. on June 28, 2011, when Kevin attacked her after an argument. He suddenly turned a corner and struck her in the chest, knocking her to the floor. She showed the police a large bruise as evidence of the attack, saying that Kevin had expressed a desire to kill her. After the fight, Linda went to bed. At the time, only Linda and Kevin were home, as her youngest son was away on a business trip. The conflict with Kevin began because of his relationship with a girl named Karina Taylor. Linda described Kevin as emotionally unstable and Karina as unpredictable, which led to frequent arguments. She said that these conflicts were common and that she was used to them. The next morning, Linda woke up and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. In the living room, she found Kevin lying on the floor with a gunshot wound. He was still alive. However, strangely, Linda said that she did not hear the gunshot. Experienced police sensed deception from the start. It appeared that Linda was trying to conceal what happened that night. She was careful with her words, while Kevin was unconscious and there were no other witnesses for the police. So they decided to test the only piece of evidence, a .357 Magnum pistol used in the shooting. They knew the gun belonged to Linda. What is even more astonishing is that 10 years ago, Kevin's father, Jim, was shot with this gun in Palm Beach, Florida. Police investigated the case and learned that Linda had been acquitted of murdering her husband, after which Linda tried to reclaim the gun, claiming that she needed it for self-defense. She eventually succeeded in getting it back. The police tried to find some similarities between Jim's and Kevin's cases that might support the idea that Linda tried to kill her son. They may even consider re-examining the first crime. Meanwhile, the police talked to family members. Jim's brother, Bob, believes that Linda intentionally shot both cases. He never trusted Linda, but there was nothing he could do to protect his family from harm. Bob was the eldest child in a wealthy and large family. As Jim grew up, he became a successful lawyer and made a good living. The family originally came from Palm Beach, while Linda was from the Midwest, where her parents owned a small family farm in Wisconsin. Jim and Linda met at a party, and after a brief encounter, he fell in love with her beautiful brunette. However, Bob is skeptical about Linda. He finds it strange that she works as a secretary at a law firm and is involved in questionable activities. Jim was deeply in love with her, so he ignored his family's objections and married Linda in 1979. Together, they went on to have 2 sons. Linda had 2 children, Kevin, born in 1981, and Christopher, born later. However, their marriage was not a happy one. Linda accused her husband, Jim, of being abusive. Over time, their relationship deteriorated, leading Linda to report Jim to the police for assault. However, she was unable to produce any evidence or testimony to support her claims. There were no obvious signs of abuse, and many people found it hard to believe that someone as respected and decent as Jim could harm his wife. After facing accusations that damaged his reputation, Jim decided to file for divorce. After the divorce, the children continued to live with Linda in Jim's large house, while Jim had to pay child support. However, Linda was still unhappy and tried to get more money out of Jim. Meanwhile, Jim wanted to spend more time with the children, but if he did not pay her in advance, the children would not be home when he visited. According to Bob, each visit cost Jim $500, a large sum at the time. Jim became increasingly frustrated when he realized that Linda was taking advantage of the situation and blackmailing him. Jim, an attorney, chose to follow the law. On February 7, 1992, he visited his children, not with cash as he had done before, but by court order. The court ruled that Linda had to allow the children to communicate with their father. Unfortunately, during this visit, Linda shot him, resulting in his tragic death. Family members believe that she was angry that he refused to provide financial support because she had previously relied on her ex-husband while not working. In a fit of rage, she shot Jim and then called the police to report the incident. When the police arrived, they found Jim lying on his back in a pool of blood. He was holding a kitchen knife in his right hand, and he had died from multiple gunshot wounds. Linda shot her ex-husband at close range but claimed it was self-defense. She stated that Jim attacked her with a knife, leaving her no option but to shoot him. However, police were doubtful because Linda had no injuries at all. There wasn't a single scratch on her body. This led to questions about whether Jim had actually attacked her and what his motive might have been. In the end, Linda's account was not believed, and she was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The key witness in the case was her son, Kevin Cooney, who witnessed the murder of his father. He was called in to testify. On that tragic day, younger brother, 8-year-old Christopher, was hiding in a closet and couldn't see the events unfold. Kevin, however, was in the bedroom with the door open to the kitchen, where his parents were arguing. He watched through. He looked through the crack in the door. Kevin remembered feeling terrified and anxious. He was frozen in place, unable to move, when he saw what had happened. Kevin reported that before the shooting started, he saw his father holding a shiny object, but he couldn't identify it clearly. He thought it looked like a knife, but it might have also been a key or something similar. After the shooting, when he left the room, he noticed his father no longer had anything in his hand. It was only after the shooting ended that a knife appeared in his father's hand. When the police arrived, they suspected Linda had staged a self-defense scenario by placing the knife in Jim's hand. Linda had a strong motive for this action because her husband's sons would inherit his money upon his death. Her children would benefit from Jim Cooney's life insurance policy, worth $1 million, which, along with his considerable estate, would be passed on to his children. However, the most compelling evidence the police uncovered was not Linda's call to the police, but her phone records. They discovered that before calling 911, she had contacted her lawyer first, possibly to seek legal advice. During the 911 conversation, Linda made several verbal errors, possibly due to confusion. She asked for backup and claimed that her ex-husband was trying to stab her, despite having previously said that she had shot him and that he appeared to be dead. The police were certain that Jim was dead before she called her lawyer, and she only contacted the police afterwards. It is also feared that, before her arrest, Linda had convinced Kevin that the knife had been in his father's possession the entire time. During the trial, Kevin testified that he saw an object in his father's hands. In 1993, 11-year-old Kevin took the stand as a witness. He spoke with a stutter due to fear and held a small toy. Although his testimony was somewhat confusing, it was convincing enough for the jury to quickly acquit Linda Cooney, leading to her release from the courtroom. Clearly, Kevin's testimony played a crucial role in her defense. Afterwards, she gave an interview to numerous media outlets, describing her ex-husband as a typical abuser. She maintained that she was not a murderer but acted in self-defense. To protect herself and her children, some people supported her. However, most Palm Beach residents who knew Linda's family did not believe her explanation. Because of Jim's calm and non-confrontational nature, the locals looked down on her and assumed she was the murderer. As a result, Linda could not stay there long due to the public backlash and the potential for conflict. After receiving financial support, she packed her children and moved to Las Vegas. She wanted to start a new life somewhere where no one would recognize her. 2 decades later, the heartbreaking incident occurred again. It involved the same .357 Magnum pistol that was used to shoot the family's father, Jim. Kevin Cooney is now recovering in the hospital. Initially, he was unconscious and partially paralyzed. He was unable to provide a clear account of the events of that tragic night. When Kevin woke up in the hospital 3 days later, his first words were, "No, Mom, I'm afraid of Mom." Mom shot on. He immediately told several nurses about this and seemed genuinely scared. It was clear he feared that his mother would come back to harm him again. His statements were serious, indicating that he was not joking. Kevin's girlfriend, Karina Taylor, was not surprised by his words. She said she lived in fear of his mother during their 2-year relationship. Their relationship began in 2009. Karina stated that Kevin had a constant fear of his mother, who reacted harshly whenever he had a girlfriend. Linda had previously frightened off all of Kevin's girlfriends, but Karina was determined and not intimidated by Kevin's mother's angry expressions. From their initial interactions, Karina developed a negative view of Linda, finding her to be erratic and aggressive. Linda bluntly tells Karina that Karina's family will never accept her and advises her to stay away from Kevin. And Linda ominously implies that she always carries a gun for self-defense. This makes Karina realize that it is best not to confront Linda, causing her to secretly meet Kevin out of fear for her safety. Kevin's previous girlfriends share similar concerns. 1. Clarita Candle believes Kevin's mother is a serious threat, as Linda has threatened her life. Kevin often finds himself caught in the middle, desperately trying to protect his relationships, which are constantly sabotaged by his mother's behavior. Kevin really wants a future with family and children. But at the age of 30, his mother disapproves of his wishes. One day, his ex-girlfriend Clarita receives an unexpected call from Linda, who has found out her phone number. Linda rudely begins to interrogate Clarita about her life, using vulgar language and accusing her of only being after Kevin's money. This confrontation escalates into a series of unpleasant encounters, where Linda openly insults and threatens Clarita. Although Kevin and Clarita's relationship is short-lived, Clarita constantly feels uncomfortable and believes that Linda is stalking her. Eventually, the stress becomes too much, and she decides to break up with Kevin to find peace. Linda's plan to keep Kevin away from the girls worked for a long time, but it didn't work with Karina Taylor. Kevin and Karina's relationship grew stronger, and he wanted to build a life with her. He decided to leave his mother and move in with Karina, sharing their plans on social media. When Linda found out, she started spreading rumors and even contacted Karina at her work. Kevin wanted to make things right with Linda, and Karina believed he tried to do so the night he was shot. Kevin could not stand his mother's control, so he announced that he was leaving. However, she refused to let him go and used a weapon. She went down from the 2nd floor and shot him in the neck. Police determined that Linda used a .357 caliber gun, the same gun used in Jim's murder. Police discovered that, once again, Linda did not immediately call the police. She waited about 15 minutes before seeking help while Kevin was on the verge of death. Phone records show that she first called her second son, Christopher, who was not nearby. The investigation concluded that Linda was guilty of attempting to murder her son. She was arrested and charged with the crime. On April 8, 2014, Linda went on trial. It had been more than 20 years since she first killed her husband. This time, the trial was held in Las Vegas, where she was charged with attempting to murder Kevin. During the trial, his younger brother Christopher, influenced by his mother, believed that his brother was responsible for the situation. He described Kevin as a very cruel person, often violent at home and often arguing with his mother. During the call, Linda informed Christopher that Kevin had attacked her by hitting her and threatening to kill her. In response, she retrieved a loaded pistol that she kept in the living room for self-defense. She intended to use it to protect herself and stop Kevin, but he took the gun from her. While he was armed, Kevin accidentally shot himself. The defense attempted to present this as an accident, but this was inconsistent with Linda's initial statement, in which she claimed that she did not see who fired the shot, and Kevin also claimed that his mother shot him. During the trial, the prosecution presented testimony from 2 girls, one former girlfriend and one current girlfriend of Kevin, as well as 4 nurses who had contact with him during his hospital stay. All of them confirmed that Linda shot him. In addition to their statements, there was considerable physical evidence, including fingerprints found on the weapon. For months after the shooting that left Kevin paralyzed, he was able to testify in court, but he altered his original story. He now claimed that there had been an argument between them that night, insisting that he attacked Linda first. The Kevin did not hold Linda responsible for the incident, referring to it as self-defense or an accident. He had expressed similar sentiments when speaking to the police at the hospital. It seemed he was worried about not surviving, so he wanted to ensure his mother wouldn't go to prison after he passed away. Kevin loved his mother deeply and continued to protect her, but this did not alter the reality that there had been reports of arguments and domestic violence coming from their home for several years. Kevin's message, originally seen as a warning to his girlfriend about Linda. It was clear that Linda had total control over her children's relationships. She chose not only who they could date but also who their friends would be. She managed Kevin's mobile phone, preventing him from talking to girls, and did the same with Christopher. The Kevin's and Christopher personal lives were completely controlled. They didn't even have doors on their rooms. Even though they were grown men, they still had to rely on their mother's permission for everything. Since childhood, Linda has said that they owe her their lives for the violent events of 20 years ago. They truly believed that their father intended to harm them, which made them completely submissive to Linda's authority. The trial was ongoing, and its outcome was uncertain. The prosecution argued that the Kevin was trying to escape his mother's oppressive control. When Linda realized she was losing control, she grabbed a gun and attempted to kill Kevin. They presented strong evidence, including a video of the Kevin in a hospital bed, where he claimed his mother shot him. However, Kevin refuted this claim, stating it stemmed from anger. While in court, Kevin appeared to take full responsibility for the incident. He admitted to threatening his mother, breaking down in tears and begging Linda for forgiveness. The prosecutor accused Linda of being completely controlling and manipulating her sons, but Kevin insisted that he was in charge and made his own decisions. He also admitted to using violence if his mother did not comply. However, this is hard to believe given the testimony of his former girlfriends, who reported that Linda did not allow her sons to pursue personal relationships and maintain tight control over their lives. Medical center staff supported the prosecution's account. They stated that Kevin was extremely agitated and appeared genuinely afraid that his mother was coming to kill him. All 4 nurses who examined him there reported that Kevin admitted that his mother had threatened and tried to kill him. Kevin was then called to testify again. The same events from Linda's first trial 20 years ago were repeated, raising suspicions that Kevin might be able to keep his mother out of jail again. However, this time, Kevin testified that the gun was pointed down when the shot was fired, contradicting his previous testimony to the prosecution. He later testified that the barrel was pointed up when he tried to take the gun away. Everyone noticed these inconsistencies in his testimony. Despite everything, Kevin still hoped that his mother would not go to jail. The prosecutor's office claimed that Kevin was biased because of his feelings for his mother, which they said affected his testimony. The jury returned a verdict in less than an hour. This time, the jury found Linda Cooney, 65, guilty of attempted murder. She was also convicted of assault with a deadly weapon, menacing, and stalking her son. At the final hearing where the verdict was announced, Bob, the brother of Jim, the first victim, spoke up. He stated that Linda had repeatedly harassed and threatened his family, ultimately taking away a loved one from them. He warned that if Linda was released from prison, those close to her would be in danger again. Kevin did not attend the sentencing but submitted a note stating that he took responsibility for these tragic events. In her defense, Linda stated that she had worked hard for years to provide for her children and meet their basic needs. However, she also believed that Kevin had inherited mental health issues from Jim, which contributed to his aggression that night. The court sentenced Linda Cooney to 40 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 13 years. Jim's family was unhappy with the sentence, believing it was unfair. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Charlotte Brown. 20-year-old Charlotte Brown from Essex, a county in the southeast of England, was having a conversation with her sister Katie and a friend. They were discussing where to meet a young man. Charlotte shared that she was looking for a serious, long-term relationship and wasn't very interested in dating sites. However, her sister suggested a new dating site to her, and after some consideration, Charlotte signed up. Soon after, she received a message from a 24-year-old named Jack Shepherd. They began chatting online and got to know each other better. Things were going well. Jack and Charlotte planned to meet in person. However, on the day of their meeting, Jack sent Charlotte a text message apologizing and explaining that he couldn't meet because he was getting back together with his ex-girlfriend. Feeling frustrated, Charlotte decided to block Jack and continued her search for love on the site. A few months later, Jack reached out to Charlotte again. He expressed his sincere apologies for disappointing her and asked if they could meet to make amends. Charlotte agreed to go on a date with him. On December 8, 2015, Jack wanted to impress Charlotte, so he took her to the Shard, a well-known skyscraper in London. While enjoying wine and conversation, they seemed to be having a great time. Charlotte took photos and shared them with her sister. Later, Jack invited her to his boathouse to continue their evening, and she agreed. After Jack paid the bill, they took a taxi to his place, which was 10 miles away from Charlotte's home in Hammersmith. When they arrived at the boathouse and had a drink, Jack bragged about his boat and suggested they go out. Charlotte loved the idea, as she was hoping for a romantic adventure. She sent a text message to her sister, letting her know about the boat trip, but her sister appeared worried about the matter. Charlotte reassured her sister that everything would be fine. Charlotte had a great time on the boat, capturing the moments in photos and videos to send to her sister. They were sailing along the Thames one December night. Charlotte was laughing and even shouting with excitement. However, Jack began to speed up, and soon they were going twice the speed limit on the river. Witnesses observed the boat speeding along the Thames. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, followed by a cry for help. People called 911 to report that someone had fallen into the river and needed help nearby. Jack was holding on to the sides of the boat with his hands. The boat capsized near Unsolved Bridge after hitting a submerged log. Police arrived at the scene and began searching the area, assisted by officers from the Marine Corps Support Unit and Air Support. At 11:40 p.m. that night, they found Jack clinging to the side of a boat, but Charlotte was missing. The Air Support Unit lit up the river with powerful searchlights to search for the Charlotte. When the lifeboat arrived, they discovered Charlotte, but she showed no signs of life. They attempted CPR on Charlotte, but it was to no avail. Her body grew colder and colder, and by the time she reached the hospital, she was pronounced dead. An autopsy revealed that Charlotte had died from prolonged exposure to cold water. The next day, the police brought in Jack Shepherd for questioning. Meanwhile, Charlotte's sister Katie had been texting her and was growing increasingly worried as she had not received a response throughout the night. Although Katie was busy with work during the day and could not be reached, it was clear that all of her texts and calls had gone unanswered. Additionally, Charlotte had not shown up for work, which was very unusual for her. Charlotte's mother was at home when the doorbell rang. She opened the door to two police officers who delivered the devastating news that Charlotte had died. This left her family and friends utterly heartbroken. During the investigation, Jack mentioned that he had met Charlotte around 6 p.m. for a date. He said they had never met before but had planned to go to the Shard and then return to his boat. Jack noted that he had trouble recalling the details of the evening. Jack said that he had been the one steering the boat. They had then switched positions. When Charlotte was steering the boat, he moved to a seat while holding on to the crossbar because of the speed. Jack mentioned that there were life jackets on the boat, but they had not worn them because he had not told Charlotte about them. He also noted that he was not sure if she knew how to swim because they had not discussed it. They had been drinking on the boat, but his memory of the whole thing was hazy. After the incident, Jack went to a restaurant, ordered a bottle of wine, had a meal, and drank another bottle of wine before taking a taxi home. He said his memory of the entire evening was hazy. According to Jack, Charlotte wanted to steer the boat and he allowed her to do so. His memory is unclear due to his intoxication, but he always remembered that Charlotte was at the helm. He said that when he got into the water, he called out to Charlotte, but she was gone. He was eventually rescued from the river, but Charlotte's bag, which contained documents, keys, wallet, and mobile phone, was never found because it had fallen into the water. During police questioning of Jack, he appeared very upset. He was described as a well-dressed, well-educated young man who repeatedly claimed that Charlotte was the boatman and blamed her for the incident. Shockingly, many who knew Charlotte or heard of what happened were largely critical of her. Jack told the police that he had taken about 10 girls out on his boat before, returning to the house for fun afterward. When asked whether he took all of his dates on the river, he stated that these boat rides were simply part of his usual routine to impress and charm girls. The police then inspected the boat and discovered it was old, had been involved in multiple accidents, and had undergone several repairs. It had many other serious flaws, making it dangerously unsafe. Charlotte's friend Lodi became curious about Jack and sought to learn more about him. She discovered that Jack was 30 years old, a successful web designer and developer, and enjoyed flaunting his wealth. Jack created his own online dating site that focused on facilitating brief encounters, typically for 1 or 2 meetings. On Facebook, Jack had numerous photos of himself, both alone and with friends and women. He referred to himself as Captain Jack and often bragged about himself. The police wanted to question Jack again, but he arrived with his lawyer, who presented a statement on his behalf. In this statement, Jack claimed that his memories of that night were unclear and incomplete. He confirmed that he was on a boat with Charlotte and that a girl was driving at the time of the accident. However, he had no recollection of the crash or the events leading up to it, except that Charlotte was at the helm of the boat. After the lawyer read the statement, Jack was asked numerous questions. But he chose not to respond to any of them. When an officer criticized him for not giving Charlotte a chance to save herself by not providing her with a life jacket, Jack remained silent. Later, the police chief learned that the day after the accident, on February 9th, Jack went directly from the police station to the registry office to apply for a marriage license with his longtime girlfriend. In November, they welcomed a child. This means that after Charlotte's death, Jack got married and then moved to Wales with his wife. He wanted to get away from where Charlotte died and start over somewhere where no one would recognize him. He wanted to forget the past and start a new life. The police decided not to close the case because they sensed something was off. They quietly kept an eye on Jack's activities. The search for Charlotte's belongings, which were lost in the river, continued. Eventually, they discovered her bag and mobile phone. It took nearly a year to recover, clean, and dry these items. When the experts examined the phone, they found a video from that night. The footage revealed that Jack was the one driving the boat, not Charlotte. It became clear that Jack was attempting to shift the blame to Charlotte for her own death. In the video, Charlotte could be heard shouting that the boat was going too fast, highlighting that Jack had lied about who was actually at the helm. They inspected the boat again. The police discovered life jackets hidden on the boat, which no one had used because Jack had not informed anyone about them. It was concluded that it was unlikely the girl was both driving the boat and filming the video at the same time, especially since Jack was frequently seen on camera standing behind the wheel. On September 20, 2017, Jack was charged with manslaughter due to gross negligence. By October 2017, he appeared in court and was released on bail. However, on January 26, 2018, Jack failed to appear in court and pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. Meanwhile, the trial for Charlotte's death was approaching quickly. It was mid-May when Jack informed his legal team that he would not attend the hearing. He was determined not to go. When the trial began in July 2018, Jack followed through with his plan and did not appear in court. In contrast, Charlotte's family attended throughout the trial. They were understandably upset and informed on the first day that Jack would not be present. Jack's lawyers communicated with him online, sharing court documents for him to review and comment on. However, they did not know his exact location. Many were angry when Jack chose not to attend the trial, despite having legal representation. He seemed to believe that he was above the law and did not feel the need to be present because he claimed innocence. Jack repeatedly asserted his innocence and tried to blame Charlotte. Instead of appearing in court to defend himself or claim he did nothing wrong, he simply chose to hide. The court had to determine that Jack, as the owner of the boat, had a responsibility to ensure the safety of everyone on board, including Charlotte. The judge spent about 20 minutes looking at photos of the boat because they wanted to get an idea of the type of vessel Jack was using. All of Jack's girlfriends discovered that he had purchased an old boat at a low price from a website that sells second-hand items. Although the boat was in poor condition and required significant repairs, Jack, who had a good income, chose not to invest in fixing it. Instead, he used the boat for evening outings with his girlfriends. The court also found out that Jack had a date in August, shortly before he met Charlotte. As usual, their evening included a boat ride, during which they were stopped by the river police. The officers warned them about the importance of wearing life jackets to prevent any accidents. Jack had met this girl, like Charlotte and the others, on a dating site. They enjoyed their time together. He took her to the Shard, bought her drinks, invited her to his home, and then took her for a boat ride. However, he drove the boat at such a high speed that she became very frightened. Finally, she asked Jack to stop, let her off the shore, and call a taxi for her. The girl was called to court to testify. On July 10, 2018, Jack Shepherd was found guilty of manslaughter. Shortly after, news emerged that he had gone into hiding. His legal team tried to reach him, but he did not respond. On July 26, Jack was sentenced to 6 years in prison for the manslaughter of Charlotte Brown, yet his whereabouts remained unknown. Police launched an international search for Jack and offered a $25,000 reward for any information leading to his whereabouts. It was eventually discovered that Jack had fled to Turkey and then moved to Georgia. British media discovered his residence in Georgia, revealing that he was living in dire conditions. He wanted to appeal his sentence, and eventually, a lawyer suggested he go on television to share his side of the story. Jack consistently claimed that he did not remember the events of that night. His memories were vague. In every statement, he mentioned that he only recalled how Charlotte switched places with him on the boat and took his seat, after which the accident occurred. In the interview Jack prepared, he was more open about what transpired, yet he still blamed Charlotte for her death. He refused to accept any responsibility and instead spread misinformation to the media. Jack then surrendered to the Georgian police. He believed he could contest his extradition with the assistance of a lawyer who claimed his innocence. He also hoped to have his conviction overturned. However, he was extradited back to the UK to serve his 6-year prison sentence for the manslaughter of Charlotte Brown. Charlotte's mom expressed her deep sorrow, saying that words cannot capture how incredible her daughter was. She described Charlotte as her best daughter and closest friend. She wants Jack Shepherd to understand that while he enjoys his life with his family, she struggles to find joy in her own life. She shared that the experience has been overwhelmingly painful and it's impossible to fully convey the suffering her family endured.